is the DAWbench Radio Show, the official podcast of DAWbench.com.
Welcome to the DAWbench Radio Show. I am your host, Vin Curigliano of AAVIM Technology in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm joined again co-hosting by Pete Brown of Microsoft in Maryland in the United States. How you doing today, Pete?
Good as always, Vin. Got a little bit of home renovation going on upstairs just to give your editing skills a bit of an exercise for this one.
It's okay. The good old AI will be taking care of that. Those parameters for me. Thank you very much. Now, today we also have a very special guest joining us from Ravensburg in Germany, and that is Axel Hartmann, who has been the go-to designer for some of the most iconic synthesizers of the last 35 years and continues to be one of the leading designers in the field. Welcome, Axel.
Yeah, hello. Hello, Vin. Hello, Pete. I'm sitting here. It's a different time. You know that we're 7:45 in the night.
Yeah,
and I'm feeling honored that I've been invited by you guys. That's something. My friend Peter Gorgas, he told me about his story together with you, and he was so excited. And he said, "You got to do that too, Axel. I gotta ask Vin if he can take you in." And there we are. Wonderful.
There you go. And Axel, you're most welcome. And the honour is actually ours. Thank you very much. That's great that you've actually found the time and energy to come on the show. So I think we're going to have some fun today. Now, just to lead off real quick, I always start the show with, I do a lot of research coming into the shows with all of the guests, and what I enjoy doing is finding where your work has actually intersected with my experience. And I mean, looking through your timeline, I'm just reading through going, oh, hang on, seriously? And there's occasional guests where I've got some intersection, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 intersections over the years. There was just dozens that I've either owned, had direct experience with, or I'm familiar with. So, I mean, the body of work is quite amazing, Axel, and I just find it you're one of these people in the industry that is behind the scenes for many, but then as soon as we do any type of research into what you've actually achieved over the years, it is, well, for me, it's quite astounding, and it is quite an honour and a privilege to actually have you on the show, Axel. So that, sorry, I'm losing my space.
Don't get emotional.
I know, and I was actually saying to Pete, I'm going, don't go fanboy.
And, I thought I'd be the one swooning. What's all this, Vin? You're Australian. You're not supposed to be emotional.
I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm Italian, so there's a bit of emotion there.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I understand. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Oh, man. So many thanks for the praise. That's just, it's overwhelming. Thank you so much.
Yeah, mate, you're most welcome. I think what would be a great place to start would be if you can give us an overview of what led you to follow the path of industrial design and what motivated and inspired you to focus your attention and creativity primarily in the area of musical instruments, because that's, industrial design is like a huge umbrella. But what motivated you to focus primarily in the area of musical instrument design?
Yeah, actually, it was more or less a second choice, because I always, my whole life, I wanted to be a musician.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a fairly good keyboard and piano player when I went to school, and I had bands there, and it was always my dream to live from making music. And time went on, and we came to the point where we had to decide will I go study at universities something, or will I have the chance to follow the music path? Or may I have the chance to make music and study music? That would be the thing that my parents wanted from me. So I tried to get accepted at university, music university, and in Germany. I tried 2 different universities, and they didn't take me.
Mm.
And it was like, what am I doing now? Because everybody told me, you will make it. You're such a good piano player. But I already had my feelings, because when I went to that contest or to that test, you have to play for the teachers or for the professors. And there were 3 or 4 people at that morning that they welcomed. And each of them, they shook their hands and said, "Oh, hi, Pete. Good that you're here. Now play." And I didn't know anybody. I came from a little country village, and I didn't have a clue what they expect. So I failed, and I went back home, and I was so depressed because I didn't have a plan B.
Mm.
And I started thinking, what can I do for a living? And actually, I started to go back to university and started law for 2 semesters with not having a lot of fun. And
that's a heck of a different law, from musicians to law, huh?
It's crazy. It was just a mistake, because I'm not that kind of person. I just saw that TV show Petrocelli in Germany. I don't know if we have it in Australia too. And there was this guy, he was so sympathical. He built a house from bricks, and he was a lawyer. And every time he went process, he came home and he could buy some more bricks, and he had this beautiful wife. And I thought, that looks good.
Yeah.
Maybe I want something like that. I didn't know that there was so much book reading involved. It wasn't my thing. And the people who went to that same courses, they were so different from me. And at a point, I did remember that we had that test in school. I think, Vin, you told me about your experience with that. So we had kind of the same thing in Germany, where you're at the 10th or 11th grade, and they tell you what you could do for a living. And we did this tests, the 3D recognition tests and intelligence tests and everything. And in the end, they told me at that test, when I was like 14, 15 years old, you should be an industrial designer. I didn't even know what that was at the point, because in the 80s, it wasn't a very popular thing to do.
Right.
But I remember when I was so unhappy with doing that law studies, or maybe I got to check out that design school in Saarbrücken. It was almost right around the corner. And I went there, and I was feeling at home at the first second. And I met the professor there, and I told him, I'm not studying law, and but this is much more interesting. And he told me, go study law. You can always do art. Do law. You earn a lot of money, and then you paint and you do your stuff just as a hobby. But I didn't take that seriously, so I applied for their test, and I went through that, and I was the happiest person in the world, because I'm a creative person, and I always did draw a lot. I made music, that was my passion, both of it. And so I was thinking from the first minute, and this is what I also told Vin yesterday when we did the tryouts. I told him about, I knew I got to merge these 2 things with what I will learn at school, and I was preparing for that. So every free work that we could do at school was connected with music. I always tried to connect the music with the art and with the design. And in the end, my final work at university, we call it the Diplomarbeit, was Gambit. I made that keyboard, and I had some of the best known German keyboard players involved. They helped me. I went to their studios, and I could see how they are working. And so it was I meant to enter this market with this work that I did there. So it was like that. Yeah.
To think we almost had another like music copyright lawyer instead of all these amazing synthesizer designs. That's a great story.
Let's not think about that. Well, let's just quickly, the Gambit, that was your thesis. That was your final thesis for
that. Exactly. That was my thesis. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is an interesting design. So if we think it was 1989,
Right.
and you had like a controller keyboard, and you had an LCD screen with some controls underneath, but the LCD screen was it actually turned around. It was on a pivot, and so that actually never really eventuated. Not that I can think. Was there anything that even came close to that actually eventuated in the market?
Not really. Maybe today, if you look at the current workstations, if you combine, if you combine a laptop with a controller keyboard, you have kind of the same setup. But that was the idea, and also the idea was that the screen was a touch screen. So that was all in there. I was thinking, how could I control what I see on the screen in the best way? So I had these wheels, the rotaries in front of the screen, but I also wanted it to be a touch screen that you can just point on the things that you want to control and do it on the screen.
Was that technology the touchscreen technology even available in 1989?
I don't think so. It was just a vision that I had. Maybe it was existing, I don't know. But I didn't research. I knew this is what I wanted.
Right.
Same thing with a CD burner. I wanted that this workstation was able to produce master CDs. You know, you prepare everything like on the Fairlight.
Yeah.
You prepare everything on this machine, and then you press your master CD and you send it out, and it gets duplicated. So that was the idea behind it.
Right.
Yeah, there were touch screens back then, but they were all just like one touch, sold to point of sale places and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe I took it from there. I just thought maybe that's something that may be possible in the future, having a almost paper thin display that is touch sensitive. I didn't think on multi-toucher, so honestly.
I like that it's got like 5. I'm going to call them alpha dials because I had the Roland Alpha Junos and stuff.
Yeah.
I like it's got 5 of those. That's a unique decision on that. It's a cool screen too. I'm just looking at this right now. Like it was way, way ahead of its time. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and all you see on the screen is I printed out screenshots from Steinberg software.
Right.
And then printed it on a special type of paper. That kind of had the image of being something like a screen, a black and white screen, because black and white screens were the hot thing back then. 256 grays, not the green ones. Yeah, they were just changing. So
I was thinking it looked a bit like the a Cubase on the Atari or whatever.
Exactly, and that's what it was. That's what it was. Yeah.
Very sneaky. Yeah, and the good old monochrome monitors. We thought we were. Had something special back then with those monochrome monitors, and we look back now and go, gee, okay, all right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Crazy.
And you actually built a life-size model of this thing, didn't you?
Yes. That's what you do when you do your thesis. You build the model, and if it's of a size, all of my colleagues and the guys who went together with me through this adventure, they all built their models. My best friend Stefan, who I started DesignBox with later, he designed a card where you can mark the streets, and he built a scaled down prototype or scaled down model, and I found it very pleasing to be able to build something that sits in front of you like the real thing. Yeah. And we had a pretty good shop at the university, and I built it together with the people that are working in the shop constantly. So they helped me a bit. We could spray paint. We could do everything that you can do in a good wood shop.
Yeah.
And I built this model. And in the time when I built it, I already touched base with some of the manufacturers in the world. I tried to find a job, and I found Wolfgang Dürren, who was running PPG back in the days. He was distributing PPG into the world.
Yes.
And he allowed me to have a keypad from an old processor keyboard.
Oh, awesome.
And which was a dream machine for me. 2 years before I took it home and cut it on the backside so that the keys fit into my model.
Right.
It brought me almost to tears,
Oh boy. So those photos on the website, they're actually of the model. They're not a render, are they?
They are from the model, and I was allowed to take some of the photos they took for the German Keyboards magazine. They had a feature of Gambit, which helped me a lot to get started into that scene. And they have a super cool and nice and friendly guy who does the photos. Back in the days, a real pro. And these pictures, I was allowed to take them.
And people listening, I mean, go take a look at this, because this just it's both futuristic and it just screams 1980s with like that spray, like faux rock texture and things like that. It's a very cool looking device.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much. Well, that was heavily inspired by my big hero, who was, the company Frog Design, Esslinger. They were the designers for Apple.
Right.
When you look at the old Apple products, like the early Apple products, and this guy was my hero. And they had these advertisements for Sony. They also did design for Sony. And they had this kind of spray paint. I didn't have a clue how they make it. So I experimented with that a bit, and I found how they do it. and I applied that kind of coating then to that model.
So it's kind of like a fleckle gray type of thing. Is that the one?
Yeah. Well, you do a basic paint that was like a dull gray.
Yeah.
And then you have the black and the white and the gray. So 3 different next levels of layers of spray paint. And you just have to adjust the nozzle in a way that it kind of doesn't really spray out nicely. So but just like we say rotzen in Germany, it's just like spilling the paint out. Uncontrollable. So, and that gives the effect then.
Yeah, it spits out. In the auto industry, because I'm a bit of a car guy, and you know what we called it? We call that chicken shit.
Yeah. Chicken shit. Because okay. Yeah, they sometimes I understand. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd spray it in the beds of utility vehicles or sometimes under bonnets of the cars, and it is that grey base, like you said, and then you have to get that fleckle type of effect. It's like you set the spray so it spits the thing out, and then you get this kind of random chicken shit is what we used to
Vin always up-leveling the conversation.
But that's the process, actually. Kind of fits right.
Yeah. Well, look, the Aussies listening in and anyone into cars back in the 80s is going to laugh their head off because they know exactly what we're talking about. So there you go. They can visualize it. Now, so as far as inspiration for the designs, do you pull any inspiration from outside of the music industry?
Oh yes, absolutely. I'm like you, a car guy. And the car industry is always a bit ahead of any other industry, I find.
Yeah.
Where I sometimes take some inspiration. I love to walk media markets, just walk through them and see what's there. And not only that I recognize and understand the technology that's being used in the top-notch products, but it's also you capture a bit of the vibe that's going on. And in car industries, it's a good inspiration for me. I must confess. Yeah,
the automotive industry. There's some really boring kind of boxy looking things that that come out as well. But when there's amazing inspired designs. Think something like, the Lotus Emira. I don't know if you know that one.
I know that one.
One of my friends recently bought that, and I was lucky enough to drive that, and it's just amazing design.
Yeah, absolutely. it's more the detail that I'm looking at. I would not lend, let's say, the shape of a car and try to bring that into the shape of a keyboard, because that will end up looking like a Tyrus or so.
Right.
I don't like that. I'm looking more on the detail. I don't want to say something bad about the Tyrus, but I think you can picture what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm not a big friend of these big curves and everything, which you find in cars. Why would you want to have something like that in a synthesizer or instrument? It doesn't have to be aerodynamic or anything. Yeah. So I much more try to make the form follow the function in a way, and give it a certain let's say character. And what I mean is, when I look into the inside of cars, when you look at the dashboards, how they change, how the switches look, how the vents integrate, things like that. This is something that's even more interesting for me than the overall shape.
Yeah, no.
This is something that I would not lend, but maybe a little detail from Audi. They started to have that hood that's at the front where the grille starts. There's this little vents that they brought in that I found very interesting. Details like that.
Yeah. I was about to say the interior, the ergonomics would be more something that you could draw inspiration from. Just where everything's tactile, where you're reaching things and how everything's laid out. That's where I would see you could draw some inspiration to just the way that you lay out your instruments. Yeah. So look, and the thing with your designs, Axel, once I started going through the timeline, I'm going, yep. And there was a very definitive design and ergonomic an aesthetic that I actually started recognizing in a lot of the instruments. And look, it was always there, but then once I started looking further into it, I went, yep, there it is. So yeah, there is a very recognizable design that you bring to the table. If that's not, I hope that's not saying that everything looks the same, because it doesn't, but there is a very definitive design style and aesthetic that you actually bring to the instruments. And even starting back to the original microwave, and you have a look at it and you think, well, okay, it's a 19-inch rack. There's a knob and a couple of buttons on it, but just the aesthetic and the ergonomic, the way you laid that out, that was always something that drew me in. And I remember that instrument right from the early days, right from the late 80s. And then, of course, we moved on to some of the more larger and iconic stuff that you did that we can discuss. But there is a definitive design aesthetic that is recognizable, at least for me, within your designs. Yeah,
I hope so, because, you said you can feel that there's a certain, let's say, red line that kind of characterizes the designs that I try to give all the different instruments and clients that I have. It's my filter, it's the way I recognize things, and it's also based on the skills that I have, but also on what I like and what I don't like. So I filter everything. But what I always try to do is I try to keep with a way a brand is being recognized and what the brand did. Up to the point where I started to come in, because I didn't want to turn around Moog, or I wouldn't want to do that for any other company that I've been working for, because just out of respect, but also because some of these instruments, they have such an iconic way they look and they feel. So I pick that and I try to give it a spin that I find is something new for the brand. And a good example is the microwave. I mean, I'm so proud that the companies that I really love, that I dig, that I love the instruments and the technology, I would play these instruments myself. So, and if you have this confidence that you're designing something that's really cool, like the first instrument that I designed, which was the microwave, I knew this is the PPG. The PPG, when I say the word, I get goosebumps, because I remember from the 80s what this machine did to the music. And the microwave was such a cool device, because everybody was building workstations characterless, black boxes. They sounded dull. They didn't have real filters, nothing. The microwave had 8 voices, and it was the PPG, and it sounded like hell. And we could be that, how to say, we could even make a bit of fun out of it. We could give it a red nose and put it on the blue canvas. And people thought, oh, that's cool for this machine, because when you put it on, you think, wow, crazy. And it's that combination, I think, that I really dig in, and that kind of drives my design work. I love the technology that my clients make, and I'm always proud to be part of it and try to add something to that technology that kind of sets it apart. And this is probably what you find in the different designs in different ways.
Yeah. Yep. And let's just roll back a little bit, because your experiences and your involvement at Waldorf, that started primarily straight out of university. So do you want to just roll back a little bit there, because you have a long history with Waldorf. So if you can give us just a bit of an overview how you actually landed at Waldorf, and then we can go through some of those iconic designs, especially the Wave, and we can discuss that in a little bit more detail. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it started, the connection to Waldorf started before I finished my thesis. I was working together, I was sneaking into the studios, like I told you, of different composers and producers, German producers, and one of them was Piet Löw. He was the house producer from Frank Farian,
right?
Who is a big shot in Germany, and he, Milli Vanilli was his band, Bonnie M. He was the producer number 1 in Germany,
right?
And this guy, he lived in Trier, which was very close to my hometown. And I asked Pete if I can come to his studio and just watch him working, because I wanted to see how does he work, how is his workflow. And when we were having a session again, I was watching him, and he said, "Oh, Axel, how's diploma going?" And so I told him, "Yeah, I'm writing all these letters out to the companies that I would like to work with, and nobody's coming back to me. I wrote to everybody." And he said, "Why don't you ask Wolfie?" And I said, "Wolfie who?" "Well, Wolfgang Dürren." Well, they, Wolfgang Dürren, the guy from PPG, and the other Wolfie, Wolfgang Palm, they start something new, and maybe they have interest in a designer. And I did that. I wrote a letter to Wolfgang Dürren, and he came back to me the other day. He called me and said, "Oh, that's interesting for me." So I have to thank Wolfie so much, because he just put the trust in me. Nobody else did. I wrote to everybody, to all the companies. And the funny thing is, I went to my Schrank, to the place where I store my old stuff, and I draw out the design folder where I see all the letters that I wrote out into the world. And know what? All these letters, they are my clients now.
Right.
They are my clients now.
Right.
They didn't want me in 1989. They thought it was that crazy guy from Germany. There was Archive, it was Kurzweil, it was a lot of the companies that I wrote to. Nobody wanted me. But Wolfie wanted me, and he called me the other day, and he said, well, he's interested. He wants to see what I'm doing. And he was coming to my home, visiting me with a guy, Claudius Brüse, who was working for him, also a very interesting guy. And I showed him the sketches and the renderings I did for my diploma. And he said, well, they look really great. Could you think you could do something like this for us? Because NAMM show is coming and we need some decoration for the walls. And that was my first job for Wolfie. So I did some renderings for him that he could take to the NAMM show and put them on the wall. And a few weeks later, I was hired. He said, "Oh, I hire you. You be the designer." Even if Waldorf was a small company, they had this one product coming, and out of that, there was nothing. So, but that was good, because I started at Waldorf not only to do the industrial design, but I also had the chance to do the advertisements. I even did the presentations on the trade shows. I played music. I did sing.
Wow.
So it was really a crazy nice time. And I will always be a part of that family, even if it changed over the years a lot, but I'm still doing design for them. Everything you find from Waldorf.
For the NAMM show, were they like abstract designs, or were they like synthesizer concepts, or?
No, I can show you some pictures if I had the chance. So I just did, the typical style that I had back then. It was a combination of markers and pastel. I painted. I did render different recording situations with all the instruments that were on stage back in the day. And that was more, it was not for Waldorf when Wolfie asked me, because Wolfie was also the distributor for many other companies like Steinberg,
right.
and TSI was the company's name. So he also brought me in touch then with Steinberg, with Meaty Man, with a lot of the companies that you know today. And so I also had the chance then later on to also work for them. That was a perfect entry for me into that market.
Yep. I was about to say that first trade show, Waldorf didn't have an instrument.
Waldorf did not have an instrument. Right. It was for TSI. Right. It was not for Waldorf. It was for his for Wolfie's distributing company.
There you go.
Not for Waldorf.
Right. Yeah. Because their first instrument was the microwave, which you designed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And this was the next NAMM show. This was where I was already hired by Waldorf, and Wolfie took me to the NAMM show. And I had my first trip to California in 1990. I think it was 1990.
Yeah.
If I remember well. And then there I did the design then for their booth. And then there was the Waldorf, the microwave. And I met all those people that I was the fanboy, you know.
Yeah.
There was Michael Bodyguard coming around the corner. There was Steve Porcaro. All the guys that I was all my heroes, and they were talking to me.
Yeah, amazing. And so the Wave, that was to say that kind of it changed the game a little bit. Well, it didn't change the game. It shifted the game, because we've already discussed. Well, I mean, you kind of hinted a little bit earlier that early 90s, everything was just, you know, a single screen, a couple of knobs. Everything was just, you know, click a button, there's your parameter. The only other instrument from that time that I think that was kind of shifting the dots a little bit, and I'm lucky enough to own, is the Roland JD800.
Exactly. Right? And we hated that machine because they shot the picture. We had the vibe, you know, when we were that little company in the village down there close to Cologne, and we were preparing for trade show for Frankfurt. We had the Wave, and we thought, oh my God, we got to turn the world with this machine. That's so crazy. Yeah. And we opened Keyboards Magazine show, and we saw the JD800, and we said, oh, these assholes, what's that? They captured the same vibe. Why?
These bastards stole our thunder.
Yeah. It's been in the air, I think. And the JD800 was also a fantastic instrument, but it kind of gave us a little knock. Same thing with a Nord lead that came shortly after, which was also, yeah.
But I mean, the JD800, the design of it is very, very different to the aesthetic that you bring to the table. It's very Japanese. This is the best way for me to describe it, because I had a Jupiter 8 prior to that. And you know, it's that whole fader, but the JD800 was a little bit more modern. Things are on an angle, you know, there was a little bit more aesthetic to it. Yeah. But I remember the impact when I first saw that JD800, and I'm at the store and I'm looking at the JD800, and there's a D70, and I needed more of something that kind of covered the basics first. And I only had enough money for one of them, and I bought the D70 first, and then regretted it because the JD800's disappeared. And then I eventually got one, you know, maybe 10 years later, I managed to score one.
Yeah. But JD800 was much they were further industrialized than the Wave ever was. You know, the Wave was a hand-built instrument, and the JD800 was already industrialized. It was plastic. It had a lot of parts that were like mass-produced. Yeah. A totally different instrument. But the basic idea of having this control in front of you in a modern machine, analog, that was just cool. Yep. And, the Wave was a different league. It was a different price point. We were more like a Matrix 12 which was, that was the thing that I saw as a competition.
Yeah. It was kind of, was the Matrix 12 still around?
I don't think so. It was just not there anymore. I think it was the time when Oberheim went down and they were bought by an Italian company, I think. Yeah. And they didn't make these super nice instruments anymore, which was a pity. But I think, but still, it was a great, how to say, inspiration for me when I designed the Wave to do something that big and elaborate, and that was really a benchmark for us when we designed that together.
Yeah. Matrix 12 is one of those bucket list instruments that we've discussed it numerous times, myself and Pete. I think it's on the bucket list for both of us, but just unobtainable now, they disappeared.
Yeah. Well, I had one, and I have a good friend who is an architect, and every time he's running out of money, he sells me the Matrix 12. And when I run out of money again, I sell it back to him. So we do that game. And so I sometimes I own a Matrix 12, and I can tell you, if you have a Matrix 12 and a decent piano, that's all you need when you play live, because this instrument is so deep and it can sound so nice. I love a Matrix 12.
Yeah. So let's focus on the Wave. I mean, that was an amazing. So was it multiple micro? I'm just trying to get the technical detail of this.
Yeah, it was 2 ASICs. It was the same ASIC that we used for the microwave.
Right.
And actually, that's what I also taught Peter when we talked about the Wave. Wolfie, he had baked those ASICs, which was something big for a small company like Waldorf.
Right.
And he had to buy so many that he was afraid that he cannot use them all. And he came to the idea, well, maybe we do a keyboard version of the microwave and put 2 of those ASICs into that one. And we just went crazy. We thought, okay, we need this full user interface. We need 16 times multi-temporally. It was just, and nobody stopped us. I was designing that piece together with Claudius Brüse and Andy Busse, who was the programmer. And we were just going crazy. We would just put everything in that we could think of would be cool for a synthesizer. And it became the beast that then was,
That's a very humble start. I was like, oh, we have too many chips. Let's see how we can use them.
Crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. And then we had that. It took a lot of the money that Waldorf earned with a microwave, and brought the company almost to bankruptcy, because it was such a big project.
Yeah. And I mean, you didn't do anything by halves with the number of knobs on that unit. And I just love the way that the design and aesthetic that you started on the microwave, you just basically went, okay, well, let's just move that into a much larger type of space. And then let's just put a whole stack of knobs per parameter.
Yeah, and have a panel that can be tilted.
Yeah, right.
And put dampers on the back that rot in 5 years, which you didn't know back then. But that it was so. That was the idea. It came to me. I said, okay, but if you have an instrument so deep, we need the panel that we can lift that and bring it in front. So, and that was I think. Something that I really like that. Anything else is just, I always wanted, an instrument where the center control is really a center. But with that big piece of glass that we have sitting in the center. Yeah. It was, I think I will really try to do my best to make the panel as slim as possible. Looking back at what I did with Gambit. But it was not possible with because we need the space, but it's still very thin in compared to what you find on the Mini Moog or so.
Yep.
And that made the instrument very attractive for the people. It looked like a starship. I remember when we showed it at the Frankfurt Music Messe the first time, people were just going crazy. We had it sitting in a glass box, and they were passing by, and they were like, "What the hell is that?
What is it?" Yeah.
So Vin, this is where I fanboy a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I've already done it, so it's your turn now.
But seriously, Axel, the Wave for me is, first of all, it's unobtainable because it's so expensive to buy one these days. But it is the single most beautiful synthesizer I have ever seen, and every time I look at that, it's like, wow, I want to see more synthesizers that are like that these days.
Mm. Yeah, they are hard to make. The thing is that this the construction alone is so complex.
Yep.
A big company like Yamaha or Roland or Ford, they would never dare do something like that today. And the smaller companies, they probably just can't afford it. And if they're clever, they don't try it because it's so complex and difficult. You see the Schmidt that was kind of in the same league, and we could bring in some of the experience that we captured since the Wave, because the Wave was one of my first designs, and we did a lot of mistakes in the construction, things that could have been done much easier. But maybe they would also have changed the look. So we wanted that look, and we gave everything for that.
Yeah. So with the Wave, all the electronics are in that thin panel that raise up?
No, they're not. And that's, it's just the user interface. And then there's this boxy big thing that lies below if you bring if you look behind the panel, you see that big box, and it's much too big. I hate it because I had to kind of make it, disappear. It's a really thick instrument, but all the voice cards and everything, all the analog digital hybrid technologies in there
are in the thicker part. Yeah, of course. I was thinking, going, there's no way that you've managed to fit all the electronics into that thin panel that lifts.
No way. Not back in that days. Maybe today would be possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's analog. The majority of it is
analog
analog
cards. You're right.
The analog part of it. Yeah, I can imagine. Imagine trying to heat dissipate all of that type of stuff. Yeah. So look, one of the other things, just really, and we'll backtrack a little bit. There was a design thing that you did that wasn't actually. It wasn't actually a commercial product. Hang on, I'm looking at it. The frame was like a design concept thing that you did.
Yeah. That was my friends from Keyboard Magazine back in the days. I remember I told you that they were kind of featuring Gambit, which was great.
Yep.
And after a while, they were asking me if I would be willing to create a synthesizer based on a how do you say when you ask all your readers what they would like to see?
A survey.
A poll. Yep,
a survey. Yeah. So they had a big readership, a lot of people, and we had thousands of things coming in, and based on those, let's say, wish lists that the users or the readers sent in, I had created the design for Frame.
Wow.
And so there's been, I don't know, 2 issues of Keyboard Magazine that had, 30, 40 pages covering the first design stage that were just drawings and ideas. And then the users could, I think, select again which one they want to have in a model. And then later on, I build a model of that synthesizer that they choose, and that's Frame.
Right.
That is absolutely crazy to take a design brief from basically everybody. Like, were they filtering it for you, or?
No. I read through.
Man.
I read through everything, and what I learned was that not all of the keyboard players are very creative. So I wanted to not to be too rude, if you look at the normal keyboard player, producer, the only thing they really want is more of everything, more RAM, more keys, more. Say they don't have the vision of something that's innovative, new control item or so. So this is something I had to bring in then together with the keyboard guys, and we ended up with what came from the people was modularity, that they don't have to buy a new product all the time, so that they can exchange certain things, that you can bring drum pads in if you like them, or you just leave them out. You can have a different sized keyboard. This is where the name Frame is coming from. So we built a framework, and then you could kind of click in different modules, just like in the modular world, but more for a workstation type of instrument.
Yeah. And look, did any of those kind of ideas filter down into some later products that you designed?
I don't think so.
Right.
No, I don't think so. Some of them maybe, but not the modularity. What I learned over the time is that people rather want something new than buying more or something new for something that they already have. And this is we learned that with a Wave. We had you could kind of integrate more functionality, more RAM or so, but people usually don't do that. They just want a new instrument. They want the kick of something new, rather than updating something all the time. So it was a beautiful idea, I think, and maybe it will be coming back one day. I don't know, but from my perspective today, everybody who tried something like that failed with a concept.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll call them the dark 90s, because those middle 90s, the synthesizer designs that were coming out from the majority of the majors was there wasn't really anything overly inspiring, not for me anyway, Axel, to be quite honest. You've got those digital hybrids, and look, some of them, and I own some of them, and they sound beautiful, and I call them my 90s digital beauties, and I've got like pretty much the flagship of nearly every brand from the 90s, but they weren't overly inspiring, and then I'd get myself into trouble in dealer and when they do product releases and stuff, and these companies would present a synthesizer, and the first thing I'd stick my arm up. I've got a question. They've gone, yeah, cool. I said, does it have resonant filters? And they, I remember a couple of the answers would be, why would you need them? I'm like, thank you. That was no further comment required. You got to be kidding me. Why would you need a resonant filter? Well, it's not a synthesizer then. It's basically just a rompler of some description.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was what people expected, It was kind of a time where sample players were delivering all the sounds that you could need.
Yes.
So I think the manufacturer's thinking was more like, why would somebody want to control the resonance if he can have 200 sounds that have different resonance?
Right.
Just choose the right sound and there it is. I think that opened the door for the development later on, where the analog was striking back heavily, And I totally agree with you. Same thing. That was like, it seemed like the developers, they lost track. They didn't have an idea, what can I do with this technology out of making more higher sample rates, more sounds, maybe pads, but nobody thought of focusing back on something that was fun to use.
Yeah, just the basic signal flow. Yeah. Sorry, Pete.
So I was selling instruments in a music store in the late 80s and early 90s, and I remember the customers coming in, and the only thing they would ask is like, let me hear the piano and let me hear the saxophone. And like, that was it. So you're right. It wasn't super creative.
No.
But I think this is why Vin owns every flagship from the 90s. He was still searching for that resonant filter.
Yeah, well, they all do. So not all of them abandoned the idea of having some nice filters. I mean, EMU had some amazing filters, and the Morpheus and all of those Z plane or Z plane, depending on which part of the world you live in. The Kurzweil had some great filters. The Roland's always maintained good filters.
I think it has to do with the way music has been produced. It was the MIDI recording was on stake, audio recording came up, so people were more focusing on producing music than working on sound.
Yeah,
they just wanted more sounds, more of everything, and it was first time it was easy to produce music in your living room that had a good quality, because you used the samples, you had the MIDI sync, everything was just on the point. So the focus was a different one. The music was a different one. If you listen to music from the 90s, you hear the beauty of these instruments that they used, because there was none. It was just like a black box, and there was a lot of stuff in there. And they were using the computer, and the computer was the center of the studio. And I think not a lot of people, not everybody, was like thinking, I would like to control this sound and give it a spot in the mix and work on it. I think that was second priority, or even third priority. First priority was, I can produce at home. Why don't I have more drum sets? Where do I get those strings that I heard in this other song? Things like that.
But we also then saw the rise of the counter to that, and then some of these instruments that we ignored in the 80s, like the TB303, which what the hell is that? And that became huge in the 90s with the electronic dance stuff. Yeah.
I'm still ignoring it.
So am I.
Yeah, it was like I grew up with it as well, like you do. And I remember the bass player of our band. He came with this shitty TB-303 and said, "Oh, this is hot. Look at it." And I thought, what is that? I hate it. It doesn't sound right. Listen to Eric. He was a drummer. He can play like Jeff Porcaro. That's cool.
There's somebody angry. Yeah. There's an angry typist in the comments right now.
I can imagine. Axel, I've already told the story multiple times, but I was offered a TB-303 for $50 when I bought my Jupiter 8, and I actually said, what the fuck do I want that piece of shit for? What am I going to do with that?
We had a glass case full of used ones for super cheap at the music store at the time, and I know they're a pain in the ass to use, but I kind of kicked myself for not having bought one just as an investment back then.
Yeah. Well, look, one of those with the Robin Whittle Devilfish mod. They're so nasty.
Yeah. Well, you can always buy a how is it called, the Akai Wolf things.
The Timberwolf?
Yes, buy that one.
I have that.
Let it
synthesizer. I've got it.
Let it sit for 25 years.
Yes.
You'll be a rich man.
What is it?
Totally. That's my retirement plan.
Hang on, what is it?
The Akai Timberwolf.
Timberwolf. Oh, like Timberwolf. Timberwolf. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And it is an ass of an instrument. It has just enough nastiness to it to maybe do just like Axel is saying, like it might be the next TB-303 in 30 years.
I pride myself in knowing pretty much all, anything to do with synthesizers.
No, you're not missing anything on this one, Vin.
I'm going to have to look it up. What the hell is it?
Oh, well, then you need to see the Akai Dan videos on YouTube then. That's what you want to look at because they're so awkward.
Okay. All right. Is it as awkward as that Japanese guy that does the Casio? Have you seen that Casio demo?
It's a different kind of awkward.
When he's doing the finger drumming, he goes, "That's rock and roll." Have you seen that video?
I've seen that. Yeah,
it's iconic. Absolutely iconic. That's rock and roll. I'm going, is it? Okay. Oh God! Yeah, we got completely sidetracked. Where were we?
I think we started with the Wave.
Oh, right. Yeah. And then we fell into the black hole of the middle 90s. Yeah.
Yes, we did. But the Wave was coming in the early 90s. I don't remember well, 92, 93.
Yep.
The Wave. And Waldorf was always doing synthesizers. They were never in the workstation or something else, different than just synthesizers.
Yep. And so let's get past the dark ages, right? We'll call them the dark ages. And the Microwave 2 was a bit of a departure, wasn't it? I mean, it looked kind of similar to the one, but it was different, wasn't it? It was was that a modeled instrument?
It was fully modeled,
right.
And we were still under shock of what Clavia, what the Nord people did.
Yeah.
So everybody wanted to do something virtual, analog, or hybrid, or so. So this was Waldorf's version, together with a Q synthesizer. Then.
Right. So it wasn't analog at all. This was all virtually modeled, right?
All virtually. Yeah. All virtually, completely.
Yeah. Okay. So that was very much a departure from the previous Waldorfs. Yeah. Okay. And let's get right out of the dark ages now. And probably the instrument that kind of dragged everyone kicking and screaming, for me, was the Andromeda, the A6. And I remember that because I had my arms crossed. I've got to tell you, Axel, I had my arms crossed because I had Alesis, the word Alesis on it, and the Alesis synthesizers prior to that didn't really inspire me that much, right? I mean, they were beautiful instruments for what they were designed to do, but, the Quadrasynth, it didn't get my money, put it that way, right? But the Alesis A6 was something that I remember when the reps came in, they just said, "Look, we've got an analog synthesizer." I'm going, "Yeah, analog, eh?" And I thought it was a virtual analog. And they're going, no, it's fully analog. I've gone, "No way." And I remember having the discussion at NAMM in 2000 with some of the Alesis reps, and one guy kind of half went off at me, and it was a German guy, and I don't know who it was.
Arndt Kaiser.
So because I was asking the question, I said, is this a true analog instrument, or is it models, or is it virtual analog? And he got kind of a bit angry at me because I kept insisting.
Not that Vin would ever be like a dog with a bone and something like this.
No.
Yeah, the Andromeda was fully analog, and the team behind it, was just amazing. They're all synthesizer nerds, and it was too good, too flexible, too big, too much.
It was pretty amazing. I don't know, and I remember the actual design aesthetic as well. That really drew me in because there was it was so different to anything else that had come before it. Can you give us maybe just an overview of the design concept that you used with the A6? Because anyone that hasn't seen it should go have a look at it, and just the layout and the ergonomics of it and the aesthetic is very, very different.
Yeah. I started that. It was the first design that I did for Alesis, and the first design out of 3 different designs that we always offer our clients,
right?
With the first throw. So when we do the conceptual phase, and this idea of the little galaxies, that was something that I was carrying with me for many years.
Yep.
Which I wanted to sell Waldorf at a point, and they said, we don't like that. They want the straight lines and everything. I said, okay, but I didn't want to lose it because I found it so intriguing to have the functional way of the different elements that you have in a module, that this could be visible with the way the module is shaped. I found this idea very intriguing, and so I put the main function always in the center, and then closer to the center were like little let's say satellites that hover around the center planet, and they spread out in the way that they show the importance of their function to the main function.
Right.
And this concept, I drew this concept then for Alesis the first time I put it on paper, and it was the first time I worked with a 3D modeler. So there was quite a few things that came together. My first job for one of the big players, US players. And yeah, they found the idea great. I was happy that they found this idea great because it was so different and quite a it's quite a risk, because a lot of the keyboard of the synth players, they are quite conservative people, so I was happy that they took this concept, and it works the best. Not in all the positions, the envelopes, it doesn't work so well. So I had to find a compromise for the envelopes, but for the filters and for the mixer and for the modulators and for the oscillators, it worked great.
Yeah.
So this is why this panel looked so different. What I didn't control in depth back in those days was how the shape and the makeup of the enclosure was being set up. So that was more done by Alesis. They had a very good mechanical engineer, and we worked together, and so we finally came to the almost classy shape. But there's some plastic involved, which I thought was not optimum.
Right.
Yeah, but from the basic idea, I'm still with it, and I'm proud of this work. But I know it's been very controversially discussed in our little business. A lot of people thought that doesn't work well. So you find the same kind of concept later on in the modal synthesizers, if you look at them.
Yeah, right.
So they caught that idea, and that kind of tells me that it was not that wrong. I think it's still an interesting take.
Yeah. So the actual materials on the Alesis, because it's been so many years since I've been in front of it, was the top panel was that aluminium?
No, it was a Lexan foil that was printed from the backside, glued on.
Right.
The basic material was metal. I don't know if it was aluminum or sheet metal. I cannot really tell.
Yep.
But it doesn't show. The foil was covering it.
Right. So it was a metal, some metal the top was actually metal, and then you put a lexicon.
The top and the base pan was metal, and the end caps, they were plastic.
Yes.
And the end cap to the left side, where you find the left-hand controls, that was like a bigger plastic part then.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And that wouldn't have been cheap to manufacture.
It's cheaper to manufacture than using wood, because you can industrialize the process.
Yep.
But you will have higher upfront costs because you have to pay for the mold, and the mold is pretty complex.
Yeah, and the machining. Yeah. There you go. Well, look, that was another one of those. I can't say it's a bucket list instrument, but if I came across one at a garage sale with someone didn't know what it was, and I could pick it up cheap, I wouldn't say no. Let me tell you, that was.
It sounds fantastic.
It does.
It is probably one of the best sounding synths that have ever been produced. It has this really expensive sound. It's so complex to program because you have so many different layers, and every function is double, 3 times. It's crazy. It's crazy complex to program, but I think it's worth.
Yeah.
Vin, that same person that was typing in the comments a few minutes ago is like now back at you for calling the Andromeda garage sale.
No.
No, we heard it here. You were like, yep, it's a garage sale.
Listen, don't go twisting my words there, my friend. I didn't say it was a garage sale level instrument. I said if I found one at a garage sale with someone not knowing what it was, and they just managed to kind of pass it over cheaply, I would not hesitate. Now, come on.
Yeah, like the same with the CS80. If the CS80 is sitting behind that curtain in the garage.
Yes.
No, but it has this impact. When you play it has this very expensive sound.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or a GX1 or Matrix 12.
Yeah.
Now you're hurting my back, Vin.
Yeah, memory Moog, anything like that. I'll take it.
Knowing the kind of cars you like, I don't think any of those are coming back in your vehicle.
No. No. But my son now owns a panel van, and I can fit anything into that, mate. And Axel's going, what the hell is a panel van? I'll let you actually Google that. It's a commercial vehicle that is based on like a normal sedan, but in Australia we have things called utes, which is a utility vehicle, and a thing called a panel van, which has got this elevated roof, and it's just this massive cargo area. So, Pete, I could fit a CS80
it's like
in
what the
back
Pope rides in, I think. Yeah.
That's very convenient.
Yeah.
But it's not made of glass.
Not glass. Right?
Not glass.
Okay.
Well, mate, I can fit a CS80 in there, mate. So if I find one at a garage sale, it's coming home with me. All right. So there you go.
Just you and the Pope mobile in a CS80. That works.
Yeah, you can just visualize that now, can't you?
Yeah. I could just see it in front of my virtual eye.
Yeah, and then getting cut off by a kangaroo or something, Hey.
Yeah.
Hang on. See, now we can see, Pete. We're completely sidetracked now. I just
Yeah.
All right. So we need to pick up the ball, Pete. So where are we up to?
We're up to the Andromeda, and we have quite a bit to go. So I think we should.
All right.
Maybe you should look at the Neuron.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's I think the story of how the Neuron came to be and kind of what your involvement in that, Axel, would be super interesting to everybody here. Because that's, I think, the first one that you weren't just like a contracted designer, you were part of the project from the beginning.
Yeah, it was my project, actually.
Yep.
I had this idea or this vision that I want to build an instrument myself. And I was this idea was being fired by when I visited Japan in 2000. I met Iketaro Kakahashi, and I showed him the first renderings of the Neuron and told him about the story behind it, which I'll tell you later on. And he was like looking at it, and I was hoping that he says, we want to build this.
Right.
But he said, well, you're a good designer and you have this great idea. You should make your own company. But first read my book. I didn't read the book, so I made my own company, and the company failed in the end, but I should have read the book. Anyway, so I founded my own company with that. And I was like, I remember I was having these sketches and the idea of having a technology that would allow to use models sound like I do it with my 3D software. I have an almost photorealistic thing that I have on the screen. And then I can kind of use it like clay, use different things that I want to change and name them. And I was looking for somebody who could deliver that technology and was asking around. And somebody told me, you got to ask Stefan Bernsi from the company ProSonic.
Right.
And he had that neural network technology that was the hot shit back in the days. And he was really good in what he did. And I was just approaching him at the trade show and I said, "Hi, Stefan, I'm Axel. I have this idea of this." And he said, I write the code. No problem.
Oh, okay.
So, and that was the starting point of Hartmann, Neuron. And then I collected all my friends and they gave me all their money. and we tried to bring that to life. And at a certain spot, we found the money was not enough. And I contacted Hans Zimmer. And went to the US and visited him, and he said, "Oh, Axel, I'm a big fan of you," which I thought that cannot be true because it's the other way around. And he said, "Oh, what do you have?" I said, "Oh, it's this synthesizer idea that I have." And I had a little audio file that Stefan gave me, where he took a piano apart. He had that piano sound, and he was like changing the material of the strings from metal to rubber, and he was changing the room where the piano happens from wood into metal and the size of the room. And I'm still getting goosebumps when I'm saying that. It sounded like something you never heard before. And Hans, he said, I want that machine and I'm in. If you ever need help, tell me. We were at the point where I told him. So he was part of that company. He invested into that company. And we tried to come up with an instrument that was working based on neural networking, that was able to recognize things that make up a sound and that gives you handles for those things. Like, again, the piano was the first idea. And you could kind of exchange the things that had names, rather than adjusting parameters, or so you could really work on those dynamically with the sticks. And that was the basic idea. We had two of those engines in this one machine, and then you could use these two modules to influence each other in different ways. So I really think that this idea, the concept, is something that maybe comes to life with the latest instruments that you find in software that do kind of physical modeling or allow you to change certain attributes of a sound in a way that was not possible before. We had that idea 20 years back, but we just didn't have the technology.
Yeah, and the instrument itself was actually, and we should kind of detail this because it was based on computer technology and software.
Yes.
And it was running on Linux, my understanding. Was that running on
exactly? It was running on Linux. Yeah, we tried. But there's a lot of things that I didn't know. I learned by when I was already in the middle of the road. I learned that certain things need to be there, and some of the things we didn't have people for. I thought Stefan was Bernsi, who did the core, the heart of the machine. He did the programming of the neural engine. I thought, well, he will naturally do the user interface, but he couldn't do that.
Oh, right.
So we had to find somebody who could write the code for the user interface. And on the way to the final product, we found many spots like that. We detected things that where we didn't have the people. We had to rerun things, stuff like that. But actually, I was holding everything together, not only the design, and that was kind of stressful time for me.
Yeah.
The design part, I had so much fun working on that, because nobody was telling me what I should do. I just tried to be creative and try to give this instrument a look and feel that was unique and different to what you found on the market. But that was just a small part of the whole development.
Yeah.
So did Hans end up with one in the end, or? Well,
he has several neurons. We built and sold, I think, 400 or 500 units.
Mm-hmm.
And Hans, he used it heavily on the soundtracks back in the day, like in the 2000s for some of his his soundtracks because it was the first 5.1 synthesizer on the market.
Yep.
So you could use the sticks and automize the sound and then the soundscapes and bring them from here to there, in the 5.1 field, and could output that from the machine. That was very interesting to any score music writer.
Yeah. And look, I don't know how many of our listeners would have had the opportunity to be in front of one. I was lucky enough to be in front of one. There was one that landed in Australia, and we've already discussed this in our pre-chat, Axel, that I think it was very misunderstood. I mean, it was an amazing instrument. I really enjoyed having a good play with it, but if you're thinking you're going to be pulling the piano sound out of it, well, no, you're that's not in the design brief. I mean, I suppose you could do a piano if you wanted to, but it was more the opposite.
Exactly. The idea was the other way around.
Yeah, deconstructing
you have the piano,
it. Yeah.
And you deconstruct it, and you find the sweet spots, and you can animate it, and you can merge the piano with a drum loop and have the drum loop control the string resonance of the piano, things like that.
Yeah.
That's the ideas behind it. The big problem was that Stefan is a great programmer, but he doesn't write code that is very efficient, that doesn't use a lot of power from the processor. So he just writes the code.
Right.
And the processor was not there. So we were really beating everything out of the processors and ended up having, I don't know, a 4 or 5 voice machine, sometimes even less. And then when you use the 5.1 facilities on board, it was like not working anymore properly.
Yeah. Well, could you imagine that technology now with the processing power we have now? It'd be insane.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah. Today, I think it could work. But I know Stefan, he would write a code that would even be today very difficult to handle. It's just like always on the notch, just on the cutting edge of what is possible.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I've been asked, why don't you do a Neuron too? So a lot of people that have a Neuron, they want to see this technology in the environment that we have today. But I think I'm not the right person to do that again.
No. Well, I mean, you could dip your toe in with a virtual instrument version of it,
I can tell you between friends that we've been really trying to evaluate that possibilities, and there's maybe different, I would say, but maybe there's a chance that something like this will be happening, but it's not in my focus in the moment.
Yeah. Look, and there are some very unique and inspiring synth designers out there in the virtual space.
Yes, absolutely.
The company DAWSome, if you have a look at some of their synths, they're kind of out there. I mean, some of them, like they're using, I'm not sure they're using neural networks, but they're using machine learning. They're using chaos theory. And it's like, what? And some of the sounds that you pull out of that. And again, it's not, you don't go to one of those DAWSome synths for a piano sound. You go there for stuff that you just can't get out of anything else. And I think that's where the Neuron, I think it was ahead of its time, Axel, and I think it was very misunderstood. And I remember there was some controversy about it, which we don't have to kind of cover, but there was some controversy around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand that, if you do something that's different from everything else, you will not only run into open arms. So a lot of people just don't want that kind of thing happening.
Yep.
I don't know. I still find it's a visionary instrument. And if you look around, you will not find many on the market. Many of the users, they still work with it. And I get every other day, I get a message from a happy Neuron user.
Yeah.
Not happy because something's not working anymore, but basically happy with the machine and what it can do.
And we've got to remember, this is early 2000s. It was an Intel. It's just basically an Intel PC sitting in there. So it would have been either a P3, or I think it's actually a Celeron from memory.
It's a Celeron, and it's a TeraTech sound card built in. That was kind of tailored to what we need in the machine.
There you go. And there's a name I haven't heard in many a year, TeraTech.
Yes.
I don't know what happened to them, but yeah, there you go.
I don't know either,
Yeah.
But there's been this connection to TerraTech, also because we used an electronic manufacturer close to their facilities. So there was kind of a connection, a natural connection to them.
Yeah.
And they were really friendly, and the technology was really good in 2001 or 2002. So
yeah, there wasn't a lot, and I mean there was that had high level audio PCIe cards back then. I mean RME had one, and there was a few others, but TerraTech being local to you would be one of the more obvious choices. Yep. Yeah, there you go. Now, and look, and for anyone who wants to hear what the Neuron sounds like, there are some YouTube videos that I discovered yesterday with some people just going through and running it through its paces, grabbing those little orange levers. Is that what we call them? Toggles, and so at least it'll give you an idea. It won't be the same as being in front of it, but at least give you an idea of the actual type of sounds that it was producing back then.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's another attractive, going back to the design, it's another very attractive synthesizer, but it's also very different from most of the others here. And I'm guessing, Axel, this is you unleashed, where, you didn't have to satisfy a client's specific request here. Like, is this, this is the example of what you would build when, it's 100% from you.
Exactly. I did that one more time with 20, almost 15, 16 years later. But this was, that was the idea and the vision behind it. I thought I have the connectivity and the connections in the community, and I know how to build instrument. I thought I knew. So that made me think I can do that. I don't know if I would do it again with after knowing what can happen.
Right.
But it was that vision. And when you do something like that, you enjoy when it's raining roses. I think that's the saying in the US or in England. And I had that all. So a lot of people say, well, that's just crazy cool. But we also had the opposite thing because there were a lot of problems involved. I remember when we shipped the first batch of neurons to the US, they came to our distributor back in the day, and he just didn't even open up the boxes. He just sent the boxes to the places where they had to go, to different magazines, and they opened up the box. They started the instrument, didn't play.
No.
We had to find out that our manufacturer was using connectors that were not clicking or glued on. So they were on the flight. They were like, they lost connection.
Right.
Things like that, and that happened to the first 10 units. And the distributor we had back then, he didn't open the boxes, and these are all little things that you learn. You learn, okay, you have to have a distributor who does open the boxes, who does not just happily receive the box and just sell it without looking into the box, especially if it's a new company. But this is something I cannot put the finger in his direction. He can't put it on me as well because I didn't know. And things like that happened all over the place. So that makes this experience not only a good one, it's also something that was quite stressful for me.
Yeah,
I bet. I think, Vin, there's a lot of Moog stuff here that I think it would be fun to talk. I think we should talk about all the Moog stuff together.
Yeah.
As opposed to a timeline. So you started, Axel, with the Voyager, which I've got one of those. It's a fantastic synthesizer. And there's the flip up design again, which you had talked about before, about Moog going really fat as opposed to what you were doing with the Wave and stuff. Can you talk a bit about, this is also a little different because the Moog already has a design language for their synthesizers.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
can you talk a bit about that and kind of how did you design the Voyager and what freedom and stuff there?
Yeah, I can tell you the story. One funny fact that I can tell you, when I was visiting the NAMM show the first time with Wolfie in 1990. We were in the Hilton Hotel. I don't know. Have you ever been to a NAMM show? I guess so.
Yeah.
So there was the Hilton bar, and we had our drinks.
Yep.
And Wolfie was saying, look, there's Bob. And I said, what, which Bob? Bob Moog. And I said, Bob Moog. I thought Moog was just a company name. I didn't know there was a guy existing with this name. I learned that. Yeah. My first night show. Okay. So, I met Bob Moog really in person, and we talked when I had my first approach at the NAMM show with the Neuron. He had his booth right beside the Neuron, and he was like showing the Voyager there, which was the first synthesizer or the first attempt that he could do under his own name again.
He got the name back.
On Neuron or whatever. He had the name back after he was Big Briar or whatever.
Yep.
And I saw Bob Moog, and I have such a respect for this person. And I saw him kneeling beside his instrument and carving out the wood so that the wheels could work. And I went to him and I approached him and said, hey, Mr. Moog, I'm this guy, Hartmann. You're oh, that's great. That's something really new. That looks cool. I said, yes, but what are you doing there? Well, I have this new synthesizer and I have to carve. And I said, let me make it right for you. I just do it. You don't have to pay me. I just do it because it's such an honor for me to work for you. I would do it right for you. And that's what we did. So the design was actually already there. We did not do a lot of things. So I think basically what I did was I was kind of making the product graphics right. I did adjust some of the distance of the rotaries and things like that, smaller things. And he paid me for that with a Voyager.
Oh, that's horrible.
Voyager sitting at home. Yeah.
How horrible. What? He only paid you with a Voyager?
Yeah. So I still have this Voyager, but that was the starting point of a relationship that lasted for many years. And after the Voyager, very soon came the Little Fatty. And that was my really first approach into modern Moog. And I think that was the first really industrialized product that they made.
And it has a very, it still says Moog and it still has the Moog design language, but it departs a lot from the things they did before. The control surface is quite different. So was this controversial with them, or, were they just thrilled to have fewer knobs, or?
No. It was, Little Fatty was planned to be a fully equipped, having a fully equipped user interface.
Mm-hmm.
And I had discussed that with Bob. I said, well, I think a full user interface is nice, but I think that people also want that they can program the instrument, that they can store sounds.
Right.
So we were working on that together, and Bob chimed out because he got ill, and Cyril took over during that development of the Little Fatty, And I was with the Moog team, with Cyril and with Steve, and we were pondering out that user interface that is kind of a mix of what we see on the Matrix 12. You pre-select things, and then you have this rotary with the LED ring, which we found very convenient. I still personally find it very convenient. Mm-hmm. And the users could program their sounds, and they have a display, and that. I think this combination, functional wise, was something that did a good job for Moog.
Yep.
Plus the design that we found for it, and the way we make the panel jump into your face. This is something that Moog always wants. A panel that kind of not only speaks to you, but it's angled and it's strong.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't want to make it a boxy thing. So I found this idea with having that aluminum extrusion in the back that has this curved shape.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's got the connections on the side again,
yes,
which was something that you had done before.
Yeah, but that's also a very logical thing, because bringing these connections into that curved shape would ask for many more difficult, operations to make that look nice, and you had to cover things, and so it was a very natural thing to put them on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a clean back.
Yes.
That's something that I also, that's one big thing that I wanted with a Neuron. I wanted a clean back, and I wanted this illuminated logo. That's kind of a mystical thing when you see it on the stage, and you don't see all the cables running out to the viewers, to the people that look at you.
Yep.
Right. I've got a Little Fatty, and this is just gratuitous, but I've got 7 slim fatties that I chained them all together and made a polysynth out of it.
Oh my God. I tried that out. That's fantastic, isn't it?
It sounded
That's
so good.
Massive. Yeah, that's massive.
Okay, what's a slim fatty, Pete?
So
Sorry.
it's the rack mount version. Very similar control surface, but it's like 3U rack unit.
Right. How many did you have?
I think I have 7.
7.
Yeah.
Okay. You sure you don't need a few more?
I could probably take a few more. I was getting them while they were cheap, but they if you want an interesting sound, I set them all to tune because they would drift so much, and I actually threw it up on SoundCloud with the sound of all of them tuning. It's quite amusing.
So, but obviously, do they interconnect and then become polyphonic? No, they're still
yes, exactly.
Oh, they do.
You can cascade them, and that's very interesting. They sound really big.
Okay, so that makes more sense. You need one more, mate. You need 8.
Yeah, well, there's the controller which made up 8. So
there is 8
with the little. Well, there's the little fatty, which is one of the voices, the first voice, and then you have 7 modules. It could work better, but when it's working, it sounds fantastic. Right when you do that.
So you got kind of like a polymoog, kind of.
Yeah.
A polymoog or a multi.
Yeah.
It's
like I said, completely gratuitous, but man, does it sound good.
Yeah. It sounds great. It's not like a polymoog was, organ dividers. It was not a real polyphonic.
Right.
Using 8 little fatties is like an 8-voice polyphonic synthesizer. And you can cascade them and control them from the one. I tried that out once at the Musikmesse when they had a setup like that, and I was really blown away.
Yeah.
And each of them drifts a little bit. It's just, it just sounds amazing.
Yeah. So sorry, be more like a memory moog, not a polymoog. Because
exactly.
We discussed the polymoogs in the last show, and I discovered some stuff that I didn't know about those ones. A very interesting instrument, but yeah.
So back on Moog, then we have you did the Theramini, which is interesting.
That's an awesome looking thing. That's an awesome looking thing.
Well, but when we talk Moog, when I started to work for them, it was such a fruitful and nice and cool cooperation. And I had this vision in my mind from Moog that there should be some kind of flower power element, which found its place in the curve and the stripes. So it was kind of a little bit, when you smoke a pot. You get these ideas,
I've got no idea about any of that. What are you saying? What smoke? Oh, what's that? I have absolutely no idea about anything like that, like a jazz cigarette or otherwise.
It's in there, and that's what I try to combine with this with that very strict layout of their panels, So and this vibe I tried to carry on with a follow-up product. So we had it with the pedal, the multi-pedal. We also did the Taurus 2, where we have the same kind of concept, but with stronger, not that curviness, but that edginess, because that instrument was so strong. So we tried to carry on that idea, and so with a Theramini, that was just like pure Jetson style, It looks like from the Jetsons. And this is also something that I connect with the name Moog, because I think when you listen to the music that they play in the Jetsons in the series, there's a lot of Moog in there. So it has this 60s, 70s vibe, and I try to capture that with a design for the Theramini.
So a little bit Jetsons, a little bit pot, and a little bit Moog. I got it.
Exactly. Yeah, yes. That's the 3 components that you mix.
So I would love to have been in the design meeting brief for that one, right?
Yeah, you couldn't see anything through the smoke, though.
No, through the smoke haze, yeah.
Yeah, well, you would be surprised, because this design that was just one out of 3 or 4 that we made. And the others, they were just like very strict developments, or how do you say? They were based on what you know from the theremin.
From the normal
theremin. Yeah. And this Jetson style was just like, I thought, I give them something very funny. And it has these feet. It's sitting there like a little animal.
Yeah.
And they fell in love with it. And I think it was the proper design for this.
It is amusing. It doesn't look like a cigar box like some of the other ones.
Yeah, but it works.
Yeah.
Well, let's think about it, right? The theremin, is it Leo theremin or Theo? What was the theremin? What was his first name?
Ooh, I don't remember.
I'm going to get my ass kicked for that one. But
Yeah.
I mean, that was from the 30s, wasn't it?
Maybe even earlier. Was it Leo?
Yeah, I thought it was Leo.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But that was actually one of the first electronic instruments, if not the first.
Yeah, and he was the person that inspired Bob to develop the synthesizer. It was so he was inspired by the theremin.
Leon,
yeah.
Oh, he's got a long German name.
Yeah, I wasn't far off.
I mean, Russian name.
So have you guys actually have you guys actually attempted to play a theremin?
Yeah, I made some noises in one once. I don't know that playing it would be
it's so
well. One important portion of the theremin was that there is an auto tune in there. So you can kind of drag the notes to the correct. Yeah. And it also has a speaker built in. So it was like just set it up and play it. Yeah, and it works pretty well. I think it also has a delay in there.
Yeah.
But the best function really is that it kind of auto tunes, and you can regulate if it just jumps or if it goes smoothly to the next proper tone or note, or just say,
It is so difficult to play, and watching the videos, and I can't remember her name.
I know who you're talking about.
This prodigy, absolute insane prodigy theremin player who could play along with the orchestra. You know, obviously she's got perfect pitch, and then she'd be getting vibrato and glides and glissando, and I'm like, oh, how the fuck are you doing that? Because even just a millimeter out and it's gone, and it's just So that was an amazing talent.
Yeah. It's crazy. You really have to a good interconnection between your body and your ears.
The ear.
It's really hard to play. Even if you think it may be easy because you don't have to learn to play keys or strings, it's even harder because the human is not made for that. To move in the free space.
Yeah, you have to have perfect pitch or close enough to it to be able to even get anywhere close.
Awareness.
Yeah. And the spatial. It's just an amazing instrument. And like you, Pete, the only attempt that I've done was doing sci-fi kind of, those type of.
That's about hard. Hey, let's go on to what I think is the last Moog that you worked on, which I have one. I'm a recent owner of this.
He's still bragging.
Yeah. Come on, it's a fantastic synthesizer. So the Moog one, is probably some of the inspiration is pretty obvious, but there are lots of little things in the user interface for that are novel and like really, really friendly for a user to use, like the way you set up the modulation using the little buttons and things like that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about the Moog one then?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a part of the development team and also was invited and staying at Moog at the facilities for a few days when we together kind of designed the spectrum of the instrument, 3 oscillators, 3-part multi-temporality, the displays and the oscillators, things like that. And I took it from there and did the usual thing. I did design 3 different versions. And one was the chosen one, and we worked through that over many years. It was a huge development. And in the end, we found that the look was very close to what people know from the memory Moog. It looked like the next memory Moog, which was not my intention. That was more coming from Moog.
Right.
Yeah.
They had a very strong marketing person, Emmy Parker, was great marketing person, and she was kind of leading the design process, taking that away from me a little bit. So this is one of the reasons why it looks so much like memory Moog. It was the idea that I came up with was a bit different.
Okay.
So this instrument also was the parting line for us. So not after that instrument, I was designing anything for Moog,
Right.
And it's not that we split in anger or so, but I felt that they probably don't need my help anymore, and they wanted something different. They didn't want to be another showcase for Axel Hartmann, or so I don't know. So I went away from Moog. I didn't went away from them, as you just didn't hire me anymore. But that's okay. The little triangle that you were talking about, is not that was lent or from the Wave. We had that with the Wave. That was my idea. I said, let's just copy that because that's very convenient. So that you have the modules are not overstressed with functionality. They're all the main functionality you see in front of your eyes. You have direct access, and if you want to dive deeper, push the button, and then you look at the display, and they can do everything that's more complex there. So that was one of the ideas that we worked on when we had those meetings before we created the instrument.
I think it's the thing that makes that synthesizer much more accessible. And Vin, if you haven't had one in front of you, like at the top corner of every module is a little triangle button, and you press that, and that's what pulls up the additional functionality and modulation and things like that for each unit.
Right, the additional parameters. And this was, so the polyphonic synth was kind of, I think, from all the interviews that I've read with Bob Moog, the polyphonic instrument was his kryptonite. He thought that that was pretty much
killed
what
his company 2 times, I think.
And so this was the first polyphonic Moog since the memory Moog. I mean, it have to be. Yeah. So what's that? Was that 30 years? No, not quite 32. It'd be over.
Not quite. Don't see, the memory Moog was like in the late 80s, 85.
Okay.
84. They stopped. And it's like...
so it'd be 25 years at least. Easy.
Yeah, at least. Well, it came... But did it come out? I mean, I think maybe 2014, 15, something like that.
Well,
I lost track.
That's 30 years. Yes, it was. I was right. First Moog polyphonic synth in 30 years.
Yeah, they the Moog was very successful with the products they made. They were very successful with all the marketing that they created. With I don't know, selling mugs and T-shirts and stuff. And I think they were pretty well financed, and they could start an adventure like that. But I think even that time it was very big, if not too big for them. Yeah.
But let's, of those 30 years, let's be clear about this. The dark ages, when the Moog brand was not in Bob's hands, so we could take 10, nearly 15 years out of that, out of that 30. And when he was doing Big Briar, and with Big Briar, there was no hint of a polyphonic synth anywhere near any of those products.
Yeah, and the Moog 1 was, I mean, that was Cyril Lance. He's the guy who was the Bob Moog then. Know Cyril? Did you ever talk to Cyril?
No.
He should be a person to talk to,
right?
Because he's been hand selected by Bob because he's also a doctor of physics, and he's now working for Rhodes, and he used to work for Moog for many years, and he was the master developer behind the Moog 1 and all of the other instruments that you know from Moog. He's a genius guy and very friendly.
Okay,
and he had the same spirit like Bob, and he always warned the company. Bob always said polyphonic is really hard to do, and it can kill the company. That was more than one time was on the table and in the air.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think the Moog 1 is kind of what led to the downfall of Moog today. So
maybe, I'm not sure.
Same.
I mean, there's been more very successful instruments that they brought to the market after the Moog 1. Look at the Grandmother and their software synthesizers. Then they have these reissues of the Mini. I think it must have been different things that made them come to the conclusion that it's better to sell the company.
Yeah.
So
lightning didn't strike 3 times.
No. and they have a successful polyphonic instrument now on new management.
Do.
So
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Hey, So that's Moog. Thank you. And thank you for all those designs. I realize how many of those I've owned over the years or have now. Now I feel like I need to buy Theremin just to learn how to play the damn thing, but I don't know. I feel like every time I walked into my office here, it would just make noise as I got closer. But
it'd be closer to torture, Pete.
Yeah, it might be, especially if I'm at it. Yeah. So I want to back up a little bit, where you designed another synthesizer that I've always thought was a super, really nice looking and compact unit. And that was the Axis Virus Polar, or TI Polar, I think, right? So TI, TI2. Did you do both the TI and the TI2 or just the first one?
I must confess, I didn't do a lot for Access. This story with Access started actually many years earlier in the 90s when I was like doing graphic design for them. I was like doing their brochures and stuff, and they were kind of existing in parallel to what Waldorf did. And they were always telling me, you do so cool things for Waldorf. Access always looks a little bit dull beside that. And at the point, I think they just took another designer to help them create the new Virus line of products.
Right.
And I tried to, because we were always good friends, we were talking a lot and meeting at every trade show. And they had the Virus Indigo.
Yes.
That was their idea. So that was from the Virus 1. And I said to Christopher, I love this design, but I got to show you something, how it could be done really nicely. And I was like prigging in the wood and the aluminum end cheeks and everything. And I showed them that design. And I think that was inspiring them and the manufacturer to come up with what you know as the TI, as the small version, the 37 keys version.
Right.
So it was maybe a bit more than just an inspiration, but it was not my design, not completely.
But the parts I like about it most, so again, here we'll go fanboy for a second, is actually the wood, the way the wood and the aluminum and stuff is part of that base design. I always thought that was very attractive.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yep.
And this is why I created that image for them. I don't even have a proper 3D file or so. Usually we work on SolidWorks, we do everything in 3D so that it can be manufactured in a good way. I just threw some images to Mark, who was kind of controlling the industrial design. And he was like, they were using it.
Yep. So Vin, did you ever have a Virus? It seems like something you might be into.
I've never owned one, but I've been across quite a few of them. Actually, no. I did own one. Ready?
Yeah.
On my power core card.
Right. That's was the yes. Yeah.
There was an official Virus on a power core card run by the Power Core DSP, and in one of those tracks that I dug up recently, Pete, the big fat intro bass. I think I've played it to you. That's the Virus.
Yep. Okay.
That was the Power Core Virus. Now, one other company that you've done quite a fair amount of designs for, Axel, is Arturia, which is an interesting company for me because I remember back in, and we're going right back to right to the start of the 2000s. I was consulting to the local distributor that had the Arturia company, and there was just this one. It was like a synthesizer workstation type of thing, and I can't remember the name of it now, but it was their first foray into software. This is before they started doing those more virtual instruments. It was this kind of workstation thing, and no one really no one really thought too much about it. And then I remember that they changed distribution, and then they started releasing all of those those modeled, almost photorealistic virtual instruments, and we kind of just went, shit, why didn't they tell us this was coming, But and they've just gone from strength to strength with that. So, and look, I'll be honest, I didn't really follow the hard, because I've been away from that. I call it the retail zoo, doing my own thing. So I've been away from the the retail space. So I haven't really been in front of any of the hardware. I'm not sure whether Pete has. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got something there.
Not the stuff that's like a VST in a box, but I had their the original mini brute, and then I got a matrix brute, and I'm considering the new poly brute at some point, but I don't know. I haven't made up my mind.
Okay, so can we cover those? So there was the original. What was the
mini brute?
No, what was the first one? The Origin. Is that the virtual instrument based one you're talking about?
Yeah.
The Origin was the first one. That was the first one, and that was my entry into the company.
Okay, so is that basically them bundling their virtual instruments into like a piece of hardware?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Exactly. It was more like that. It was that user interface that they wanted. It was a little bit like the Realizer, if you remember that one from PPG.
Oh boy,
that came up in conversation, and I said because Pete wasn't aware of it, and I've said that PPG Realizer. I saw an ad for it in the Keyboard magazine, and we didn't know whether it was real. And I don't even know whether it actually eventuated. Did it actually make it to market? And we couldn't.
I think they built a few.
Yeah,
but it never. I think it was at the breakdown, right at the edge when PPG went out of business. But this idea is still hovering,
and we're still trying to figure out what it was.
Yeah, it was the idea was, he had a Minimoog on that screen, you remember?
Yeah.
And he had those rotaries that were kind of connected visually, real hardware rotaries sitting to the side of that screen where you could control the user interface. So actually it was a virtual instrument. And the idea was that he could have more virtual instruments that you could control with that, which was, I think, when computer technology moved forward, so that was obsolete.
Yeah.
But the idea was so intriguing, and it's like a phantom, if you say, you remember the Realizer, everybody like, oh, the Realizer, yeah. It's like something that really was very attractive to many people and like a myth.
Yeah. Well, it was 20 years ahead of its time. We didn't know.
Absolutely.
We literally looked at it and I went, what the fuck is that? Yeah. I have no idea what that thing is.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Origin was something like that. The idea behind Origin was that you could use the Arturia, I would say, synthesizers inside this instrument, but more than that, you could combine the filter of their Moog with the oscillators of their CS80, things like that. You could fix that up, and so that was the basic idea. And they had a design made up, which I was not involved with. It was just like I was at Frankfurt on NAMM. I was walking, and Frederick came to me and he said, "Axel, come in. I show you what we have." And he showed me that instrument that was designed by a designer from Paris, a French designer, and it was not good. And he said, "Well, but we're almost finished." And he will use probably my services later on because I was on the search for clients, And he said, "Well, but you don't like that." I said, "It's okay." And they want to bring it to the market. He said, "Even 2 or 3 months." And I said, "It will never bring it to the market in 2 or 3 months. It will take a year or 1.5 because I knew what I saw. It was not there. Not only the hardware, but also the software, everything." And we went away. And a year later, it was still not on the market. But Frederick came to me and he said he trusts me because I could see what's going on. And he hired me. And so I had the chance to redesign what they had on the table and make the Origin together with them or for them. And also the Origin keyboard.
Yep. I've got one question with the Origin, which intrigues me because it is running their virtual instruments. What's actually powering it? Do you know?
There's nothing pairing it. It's inside the box. There's no pairing.
No. What is powering the actual virtual instruments? What is there a DS?
Vin's Aussie accent strikes again.
Yeah, good on you. Is it a DSP? What's the?
No. I think it is a PC, but I'm not 100% sure. No, maybe no. Sharks.
Shark, yeah. The DSP, it's either that or it could be an FPGA.
Yeah, I think it's Sharks. It's Sharks. No FPGA, I think, involved. I just remember that the guy who wrote the software, who's a friend of mine, he's like, he was going crazy because it was so difficult to program.
Oh wow.
Well, they needed to port everything that they've done on that x86 code.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. It's Jérôme Dumas.
No.
Ever heard that name?
No.
He's working. He's a great programmer, and he works, for example, for the X key, that little silver keyboard that looks. Yeah. So he's been writing the software for that.
Right.
And he's involved with many projects with CME, Chinese brand. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So he went crazy, and but at the end it came to the market origin, and I was very proud of the design, especially of the keyboard design. And I found Frederic Brun, who's the owner of the company. He's a really strong but very friendly person. So we're in a cooperation since then. So all the hardware that you find is from my team here in Germany.
Right. And so the later Arturia synths, I'm sorry, Pete, you were reeling them off way too quick.
Yeah. So there's the first one was the Mini Brute, and then there was a Micro Brute later.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And that's just they were known for doing software, and they're always open for new things, and that's really fascinating.
So are these analog? Are they virtual analog?
These are analog. They're not even virtual. They're real analog.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Okay,
and they have they've got a unique filter because they sort of centered on the Steiner Parker filter.
Yeah.
And so they all have a very unique sound, and people tend to love it or hate it.
Yeah.
It's only Frederic who allows things like that for his company. Who would think as a software company, I'm now trying something analog.
Right.
Somebody brought him the idea, and he was kind of jumping on it, and he's just been pushing it through.
So they took that, and so you were involved in so all of the analog synthesizers have a different design language from the stuff that came previously from them. So did you create that Brute design language, or did they do that?
Yes. No, that's all my work. The Brute language, the Brute is the black boxes, so the dark gray boxes.
Yep.
And the smaller boxes, and then there's more lines becoming over the time, and then there's the controller keyboards. But when I designed the first instrument, I tried to come up with some design principles for them, for their hardware, because they didn't have anything. It was not like Moog that had a product language. Arturia didn't have that. So what I tried to capture, by the origin was cream white. It was I tried to give it a kind of a French vibe, something that's softer, with curvy lines, with the light blue color as a spot color, and with these knobs. They are shaped like they grow out of the user interface. They kind of they look almost a little bit biological when you look at them closely. These are all things that I try to create so that we come to a certain design language for this company, because they didn't have one. And we're still using the same kind of design language for all the products that you see if you look at them. There's been an evolution, in the shapes. Things get a bit more edgy, and we change the glossiness or the touch and feel of the elements that the user can touch. But in basic, it's still the same principles that we use.
Right. And then you ended up working on, because the Brute line grew pretty quickly. It suddenly went from these very small synthesizers over to the Matrix Brute, which is a beast, which probably presented some kind of unique challenges there.
Yeah, it's one of the most important things in this cooperation is that the manufacturing of these instruments is happening in Asia, in China. If you look at these instruments, if you have a Matrix Brute, you can feel the quality that's in there. There's great product quality in there. So we had to work on that quite a bit. With they have some quality managers at Arturia, some in China, and we always communicate if we come up with something. So bringing the Matrix Brute to the market was because it was their first really big synthesizer.
Right.
Yeah, had a lot of new things with it that they didn't have before, like the matrix itself with that huge silicone mat that they use for the matrix and for sequencing and everything, with a multiple LED grid that they have put behind that. That's a bit of a challenge to make that look and feel right. Same thing for the entire for the entire synth. I mean, it has also the collapsible panel. A lot of little details that we had to work out in a way that they are that you can industrialize them and make them right for a process, a slim process.
Right, and it has some nice woodwork on the sides and stuff as well. But the one thing that I always question looking at it is what drove the decision to go with that little e-paper display? Do you know?
I don't know. It's a great decision, I find, and because it kind of keeps what you have set,
right?
And that's a wonderful decision. I could think, but I only got at that point they told me, well, there will be an e-paper display there, and I thought, well, that's a great idea. It's the same like you find in the now in the latest instrument in the Astrolab. They have this round display. I think these decisions are very much driven by Frederick, the owner, because he's a kind of a visionary, and he loves things to happen in his products that are different and that are also useful.
And from there, I think, and this is more just a question about like how you decide some of these things, where you have a habit, or not a habit, but you have a tendency to do the flip up panels because it makes it easier to get to all the controls, and there's more accessibility there. But on the Polybrute, if I recall, the flip up panel went away.
Yeah.
So and it's still just as deep and complex a synth as the other ones. Was that just a manufacturing decision or something else?
Yeah, that was a budget decision. Actually, yeah. A collapsible panel is not so cheap to get, because you need to have an enclosure just for the panel, plus an enclosure for the synthesizer. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of parts coming together. You need a kind of a mechanism that kind of holds the panel in its position. So there's a lot of things involved that are sensitive to the pricing, and that was the driving force in not using a collapsible panel for the Polys. Unfortunately,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
let's talk about probably one of the biggest beast synths I've ever come across, which has one of these panels as well.
Have you actually come across it, Vin?
Well, I've never. No, only online, right? I've only just discovered it. No, there wouldn't be one. I doubt there'd be one in Australia. There might be, considering what I've recently discovered.
It costs as much as the whole GDP of Australia. So
yeah, this thing is. It's called the Schmidt 8 Voice.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and I read up about it, and I was having a bit of a chuckle. About basically this thing was like a breadboard, kind of just components over some guy's kitchen table, that he'd connected all up, and there was no idea of how this thing was going to become. He couldn't visualize how this thing was going to actually be fitted into a synth design, and that's where you stepped in. Can you give us some overview on the story of your involvement there? Yeah,
but also tell us, do you have one?
I don't have one.
Okay.
I could have one, but it's still, if I bought it, it's still very expensive here. No, the story is a really funny one, because and very unexpected for me. This guy Stefan Schmidt, he developed this synthesizer. He's not a white paper in our business. He was working on what's the name of the company, on a little TB303 clone or something.
Right.
But that was pretty successful. So he's a great analog guy. He's a shy person, if I can say that.
Mm-hmm.
And but he's a very talented and a very good engineer. And so Stefan Hund, who was the distributor for Moog into Germany, he was in his kind of a friend of him. Maybe they had a connection through distributor. He distributed his machines or whatever. But he gave him money, paid him to develop a monster synthesizer.
Oh, okay.
Which is the Schmidt. So, and he developed that synthesizer in his little flat in a small village close to Nuremberg. And one day, after years of development, Stefan Hund came to me and he said, well, I think Stefan Schmidt, he has the synth ready so far. And he wants me to be involved in the industrial design. They need a package for it, packaging. And we drove together to Nuremberg, and I met Stefan Schmidt the first time with Stefan Hund. And we went into this little house, which was very, how to say it? I don't want to say it looked poor, but it looked like a very simple house. So we went in there. Stefan Schmidt, the friendliest person I've ever met, a very soft guy, a bit shy. And he brought us to his room. He has a little shop. And he had the synthesizer boards laying on a table. They were all connected. There was the engine sitting somewhere, and we played the synthesizer, and it played absolutely flawlessly without any problems for hours. It was just finished. I never experienced something like that before. He finished the synth, and the synth sounded so good, the engine. And he, the first thing that he told me was he hates analog synth. He loves digital synth.
Wait, what?
Yeah, he had to finish the synthesizer. He produces so much dirt in the noise and stuff. He loves digital. That's so clean. Plus, I found that so funny. This guy was working on this analog synthesizer for years, and he doesn't even consider that being a cool technology. That was just crazy. We laughed ourselves away. And so Stefan Hund, who was financing this project, he asked me, what can we do to bring that on the road somehow? We want a design that is very easy to make, convenient. That's the first step. And in the second step, we do the real thing. And the real thing, that was what our thinking. We wanted a user interface that was kind of hovering, a very thin user interface that you could bring on a Visa mount arm and use it as a synthesizer controller in your studio. And the engine, the cards, they should sit in sort of a rack. That was the idea that we had, and that should look like we're like from another planet. We wanted something really crazy. But until we can do that, let's just package this thing and make it look like a proper synthesizer. And that's what the Schmidt became. So I did some quick designs. I said, okay, let's take this panel, all the functionality into a flippable panel. Let's hand build this enclosure, and we designed that with a vision or backhat that this is just a preliminary thing. Later on, we will design the real monster, which never happened.
Right.
So that's the story behind the Schmidt from my perspective, and from my understanding, they've been running several. They always run several a batch. There's a company in Germany that kind of builds these synthesizers for them. HMT Riffle. They build more synthesizers. You may be knowing a lot of synthesizers that they produce, but they build that synthesizer for them, and they order a batch of 50 units, and they sell them. And after that, they order another batch. So it's always smaller batches, and I think they already sold a few batches, which is quite amazing.
Right.
Were you saying the batch was 50 units?
I think so, yeah.
So there's, at least over 100 of these units out in the space somewhere?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and I can't even fathom. What was the rough price point?
I think 20 or 25,000.
Euro.
25K. Euro, yeah.
Well, that's 50K in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, it's your whole GDP.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ha, ha, ha. Oh, you're a comedian, Pete.
How come I got to give you shit about Australia?
Oh, yeah. Good on you. It's all right, mate. I'm gonna let the Aussies loose on you now.
You're gonna let the drop bears on me.
I'm gonna let the drop bears onto you. Okay.
But yeah, this is not a cheap synthesizer. Everything I've heard sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's every function is on the panel. This is where the critics sometimes come in, especially when you talk to Moog, who are very proud of that they are the company who just brings the sweet spots on the panel, which is true. And that's difficult to do. And the Schmidt is just bringing everything on the panel. So this is why it looks so big and crowded. But if you're a real synthesist, if you really want to dive into it, I think that's the best you can get. It's like a big modular.
Yeah.
It's a crazy synthesizer. And I can tell you a little side story. I have a friend who's been having this band Snap. I don't know if this says something to you. They had this one monster hit. I Got the Power. I got the power.
Snap.
Yes, Snap. Okay.
Yeah. That's a friend of yours.
Luca Ancelotti. One of those is a friend of mine. And he was coming to me at one of the Frankfurt Music Messe, and he said, he's buying Schmidt and he wants a special version. So we made a special version of that synthesizer for him that was so over the top. Maybe you find it one day somewhere, but it's just this one Schmidt that is really on another level. Different makeup for the enclosure, all black keyboard, tailored to his needs, graphically.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
All the wooden parts are black aluminum. It looks fantastic. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
That's a hell of a name drop. That was such a popular band when I was growing up. So
yeah. They're from Frankfurt. Yeah.
Oh, I'd never heard of them. Sorry.
That's no problem. You must know this one song. I Got the Power. When you hear it, I'm quite sure you will recognize it and say, these guys. It was a smash hit all over the world. Yeah,
I will. I probably will know the song if I hear it, but I didn't have the reaction that Pete did. No, I was.
It's all right. The culture will eventually make its way down to the southern continent.
Here we go. Look, he's got the plunger out again. Yeah. He's got the plunger out again.
What they did was kind of a commercial techno music.
Right.
I wasn't personally. I was never into music like that. So maybe that's the same for you, and that's the reason why I don't know them. But they pretty popular. Yeah. This was the number one hit in the US.
Yeah. I only knew about it because my roommate in college had that tape back then, and he was constantly playing it. So
yeah. Okay.
So we're talking 80s, 90s, right?
Early 90s, I would say.
This was 1990, if I remember correctly.
Mate. If it didn't have, odd time signatures and a lot of guitars, I probably, even though I'm a synth player, I probably wasn't listening to it. So there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. So the Schmidt, we've got past.
So interesting that's not the kind of final intended design. It's just let's get everything onto the panel. And so we have something to demo, and that ended up being what ships. So interesting story behind that.
Yeah, that I found it interesting. Every now and then I think, why don't we try to do the real thing? But yeah.
I'd be curious to see it.
Yeah. Me too. We didn't design it yet, but I have this vision, I think I know it, how it could look.
Yeah.
So then I think we have one other big company or newish company we wanted to talk about here, right?
Go.
So we have all the UDO stuff, which is another new, it's kind of a new brand doing things that look a little retro but really aren't. So can you give us a run through of your relationship there and kind of where that came from? Because you most commonly hear them compared to 1980s Roland, but there's really a lot more to it.
There's a real lot more to it. George Hearn, who is the owner and brainfather of everything that's coming out of this company, he used to design the I think it was the Modal 08, the 8 voice analog. That was his design. And this guy was designing synthesizers, I don't know, since he was 9 years old or so. Crazy guy. Super clever and uber friendly, from Bristol in England, very British. And he approached me a few years ago with a concept drawing of something that looked exactly like a Roland Jupiter 6. And it looked so good. And he sent it to me and said, we want a design for that. And I said, you have a design. It looks a little bit like a Roland, but it's a great design. And he said, that's exactly what we don't want. We don't want to look like a Roland. But we want to have that kind of concept that they brought to the market, with the sliders and easy to understand user interface, plus the sound engine. Well, he's programming those FPGAs, and he's really, I think, very intelligent guy. And so yeah, we did work on the Super 6 then, and we tried to give this Rolandish user interface a unique look and feel, and also an enclosure that is different from what Roland did or what anybody did on the market. And the Super 6 became a very compact little synthesizer that you want to put below your arms and sit it on top of your Rhodes. And that's what a lot of people do.
Yep.
Yeah, and UDO, they are a company. George is the mastermind behind the sound engine, and he's the driving force inside the company. But his brother is a graphic designer, a skilled graphic designer, and we interact pretty well. So they're giving me the best worked out briefing that I've ever seen. It's such a great briefing, so I really know in which sort of boundaries I shall move. And they used my services for the design, but they also used my connectivity into the manufacturing part of a synthesizer, because I have a good network of people who can help a company, a newcomer company, like UTO was, or like, that I've also designed for Supercritical, this new little synthesizer. And these are all companies that are young people that have a good spirit, that have a strong vision of what they want to do. And with this network, we can help these companies to come up with a product that is competitive in a market that is mainly filled with companies that are much, much bigger and have different, let's say, budgets to develop their instruments.
Mm.
And this is what happened with UDO. Having us as industrial designers and having this connectivity to HMT Riffle. We had that before in the conversation. HMT, that's Frank Riffle. It's a friend of mine that I know for, 35 years or so. And his father was building the organs for a company, the Versi organ, his father-in-law. And they are, it's like the Silicon Valley of Germany for organs, where he's located. And his father's been building the organs for Versi, and he's picking up the ball, and he's been building instruments for Waldorf, for Excess, now for UDO, and for Supercritical. And he also builds the Schmidt, and it's that network. If you have people like that, and it's not only him, it's also this company, Vefo, that's just beside his company, and they are injection molding company. They can give you the plastic parts.
Yep.
So, and I think this is something that I could, beside the design, bring to George and the brand, that they come with a concept and they find the renderings that we do in our designs, and they already look like a finished product. And then we bring that to Riffle, and they build it like that.
Yeah.
So it's like a full package that these companies get from us. This is, I think, has been a good starting point for UDO. They become stronger and stronger. You've seen the instruments that came after that, like the Super Gemini, or the desktop version.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could develop a great, it's still Roland inspired, but it's an own product language.
Right.
Yeah.
So Vin, I think we've hit, we didn't discuss everything that Axel's designed here.
I've got.
Do you have one?
Yeah. Because
right.
I'm a huge Roland fan.
Okay.
So Axel, you've only worked on one, but it was and it was pretty late in the game. But the Roland Phantom.
Yeah, and that's not been the only one. I also worked pretty heavily on the AX1, their shoulder keyboard.
Oh, okay.
But the Phantom was one big centerpiece of work that we did together with them, and was probably the biggest project that I had the chance to work on for a Japanese company, one of the big Japanese players.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to remember when Taro sadly passed. Was that before or after you worked on the Phantom? Do you remember?
It was. I don't remember well. I don't want to say something wrong. I think it was before.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the AX, the keytar as well, huh? That's fantastic. because that had a really good look to it. And sorry, Vin, I'm not going to steal your Phantom thunder here, but
no, well, no. Look, I don't own any modern Rolands. You know, my Roland stopped at JD 990. You know that, Pete.
Yeah, but I worked on the AX1, but it's been a teamwork. The final product does look a bit different from what we designed. Just to make that very clear. But a lot of the basic ideas that we brought to them are in there. So that was just what I want to say. It was not our first and not our only cooperation on the Phantom.
Yeah.
We also worked on Galaxias, if you know that. It's their new software platform where you can go to the web and download sounds and stuff. So we did the user interface for that.
Yep.
That's not even on our website.
Yeah.
But we have a great relationship with Roland.
Yeah. There is a very identifiable aesthetic that you've brought to that design, Axel, or for me. I mean, when I saw it and I went, yeah, I can just see those your fingerprints on it. It's not as distinct, let's say, than some of the Waldorf designs, but there is definitely an Axel Hartmann fingerprint on the aesthetic of that machine. Well, to me, there is anyway.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's what I wanted to bring to them. I think that was what they were expecting.
Yeah.
If you see the competition, which is the Chronos and the Yamaha, the Montage, and I remember Roland. They had the Phantom line, and now they have an instrument with a Phantom and the design that kind of competes. And I hear a lot of people saying that it's the best looking workstation in the moment. Because it has a certain calmness to the design, which is very important for an instrument so powerful and so flexible that you cannot really overstyle it. It needs to be more like a canvas. And I tried to bring that to them. And again, it's a different kind of cooperation with Roland, the Japanese, I would say, tradition and the attitude that they have is so different and good in a good way that I also learned a lot through that cooperation.
Yeah, I had a lot to do with Roland during my past life at the higher end of musical instrument retail. You know, I got flown over to Japan and I did the whole tour of the factories, and I met Taro and had dinner with Taro once, and it was very memorable. It was an amazing company, but it is a very, very different in just the whole operation. And
the whole culture is different, but I like it.
The culture, yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah. And I didn't know it was the Phantom they wanted me to work on. You know, if I knew that before, I would have flipped out. I played the Phantom myself with the upper band. You know, I had a Kurzweil PC-88, and I had to exchange that at the spot, and I had replaced it with a Phantom. And the funny thing is that I designed now the Phantom, and I also designed the Kurzweil, the new Kurzweil K line of products is also my design.
That's not on your timeline.
No, not yet. It will come.
Oh, it's a new one. There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, you mentioned the ABBA band, and Vin, I think we skipped over that earlier, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. That was in the pre-chat. Yeah.
So, all right. So tell us, and are you out there singing Dancing Queen, or like what's
well, not anymore, I don't think. Yeah.
Not anymore. We had this ABBA band from, I think it was 1996 to 2006 for 10 years. And I was the keyboard player. I was Benny.
Yep.
And I was never a big ABBA fan, I must confess. I always, I like, I don't know, Toto, West Coast music, fusion, pop music, something like that. And the musicians as well. So this ABBA band that we formed was like, it had balls. I think there's a saying in Australia where you say it had balls. It was really
ballsier.
More
rockier.
Band.
Yeah, more rockier.
Yes. And but that made us quite popular in Germany and in the surrounding countries. And we played a lot of gigs, almost I would almost say professional. It was a really nice time and cool for me to experience something like that in my later years, which I wanted when I was so younger. I wanted that so much and I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was nice, but we had to stop it because we all had families at a point and dogs and parents and things, that come when you're getting older. So we had to stop that and could not travel so much anymore.
Yeah, look, the ABBA compositions, amazing musicianship in the actual compositions, and I could see a heavier version of ABBA easily.
Yeah. Well, we had fantastic singers. They were really, really good and good looking.
Yeah.
Not only good voice, but also good looking. I think that was the secret sauce. And the band was very good. We had that rocky, fat sound, I think I played a lot of things, you really need 4 hands actually, and pedals and everything to create that sound, that fat sound.
Yeah. You're almost Geddy Lee.
But almost. It was really crazy. Believe me, some of the songs, I don't know how many different splits I had on the keyboards. And very, let's say, a lot of instruments. I had several Waldorfs and in a rack, and I had a automated mixing console at Yamaha, and I traveled with a PC-88 first, then the Fondo X8. And I always had a Yamaha EX5 on top of that, which sounds great.
Yeah. No, they are quite nice. Hey, just before we move on, just real quickly, because you've done some of the later Waldorf instruments as well. And one of my friends here in Australia is the Waldorf distributor. And hint, Chris, I'd love to get in front of one of them. The Waldorf Quantum was the one that kind of grabbed my attention. Because it's almost, and you've even mentioned it, that it's almost like the spiritual successor of the Wave. It doesn't have a lift-up panel, but there is a lot of Wave in it. There.
It is. Although it's a totally different developer, the main brain father of all the Waldorf products is Rolf Wörmann, who joined the company just 5-6 years ago. And he's just another genius in this market. All that you hear and see on this instrument display and is his work. Pleasure to work with this guy, I can only say. And the Quantum was the first synthesizer that opened a new line of products for Waldorf with that technology. The Iridium synthesizers, the core and the Iridium keyboard, they are just using the same engine, just not the analog filters. And I had the pleasure to present these instruments just 4 or 8 weeks ago at Sweetwater, traveling with Waldorf, and I could play them the first time in depth, and I must really confess they are great synthesizers. They sound fantastic, and they're so very flexible engines.
Right. So you're in the US recently doing a bit of a tour. Yeah.
The Iridium, I've got the module version of that. So did you do the design for that as well, or did they sort of take the quantum? Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So Waldorf, like I said, is my has been the first company who employed me, where I worked as an in-house designer, and I left them in 95, but I could take them as a client with me, and everything that you see, everything, also the software, even the website, everything is drawn by my company.
Did you do the little screensaver that's on the Iridium that's bouncing the pentagons around?
No.
All right. So we found something you didn't do on the
I did do this screen that comes up when you start it. Yeah. But the bouncing, I think that must have been Rolf.
Yeah. Makes sense.
There you go.
Yeah.
And now, look, we're focused on the synthesizers, but you design more than just synthesizers, Axel. And I mean, if we have to go through the list, we'll be here for 6 hours. So, I mean, let's just say that your design umbrella spreads a little bit wider than just synthesizers. So you've done audio interfaces as well, and you've also designed software GUIs.
Yes.
Was it Antares? Some of the Antares stuff, and
some of the Antares stuff, and it's too much to remember. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I've been working recently on the Rhodes software. The Mark 8 virtual Rhodes, and their new collection of Rhodes instruments. And,
but you've done the hardware road as well.
The hardware
right?
as well. Yeah.
Look, and again, we could seriously sit here for another 3 hours picking off instruments. Pete, is there any other instrument designs that you want to chat to Axel about?
Well, not off the top of my head, but I think you would be curious. Axel, are there any that we didn't ask you about that you've been dying to talk about, or something you want to bring up?
No, not really. Well, the 20 maybe, but that's something people can look up at our website or in the net, because this is something I'm quite proud of.
Well, no, let's discuss that one, because it's a concept, right? Or has it reached the point where it's gone?
No, we've been selling a few. It's based on it's existing, and it's been meant as an anniversary synth for my design company that I had together with Stefan, Design Box, when we had our 20 years anniversary. This is why it's called the 20.
Right.
And we had to, because I didn't want to walk the full Monty, I didn't want to develop a synth engine myself. I tried to find some engine that we could just use. And it was the engine of the Sledge, Studio Logic Sledge, which was based on a Waldorf technology. And we used that technology and paired it with a high-end AD converter, DA converter from SPL. That's what's inside, but the outside was quite spectacular, because the entire synth is milled out of one massive piece of aluminium.
Wow.
And we spent, I don't know, thousands of hours on designing that in a proper way so that you could machine it and give it the look that you see from the renderings.
Well, now I'm kind of flabbergasted, because I thought it was just a concept. I thought it was just a design concept. So what brand are you selling that under?
It's the brand 20.
Oh,
it was just
it's the Hartmann 20.
It's not even the Hartmann. It just says 20.
Everything's 20. It also costs 20K because it's so expensive to make. Well, the enclosure alone is several thousand Ks. I think 7,500 Ks just for the enclosure.
Wow.
That we pay for it. But we sold a few, not as many as I hoped to, but that may be connected to the misunderstanding of we use a proper engine. If we use the Sledge engine, maybe that's not being the fitting technology for this kind of instrument. But on the other side, together with the SPL converters, it really sounded really, really good.
Oh, it sounded amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. But we had I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 units we have made, and Hans is the owner of one, and we sold another few into the US.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, yeah. Okay. That was just set me on my ass. I was looking at it thinking, oh, it's not it's not a real thing. So there you go. Yeah. Wow.
Because it's milled out of that solid block, it doesn't look real in those.
Well,
that's
what you see on the on the website are renderings.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay.
They are renderings, but the real thing looks exactly like that. It's really crazy nice.
I did see a photo of you in a printed interview on the web, and you were in front of the actual cabinet. So I'm thinking, hang on, is that a 20? So I'm thinking, okay, but this is why I didn't realize that it had been released. I thought it was just still one of these concepts that you were working through.
No, it's really been released, and we showed it at Super Booth. I don't remember the year very well, but maybe it was like 2017 or so, before the pandemic.
Ah.
Yeah.
That's the one that kind of slipped under the radar, Pete. There you go.
Yeah. I gotta pause for a second because I have to do the Peter Gorgas thing for just 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So he's got an open window.
Yeah.
I got a fantastic sound effect for that, so off you go.
Yeah. Yep. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm back.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, good. So, so another window moment, I think.
Another window moment. It's all right. If you listen to the Peter Gorgas show, it's about an hour in, he decides to go for a toilet break, and we decide to have a bit of fun, and I put a sound effect in, and,
Yeah.
There't all this talk about, the window was close by, and there's all of that type of stuff going on. Yeah. Now, we're finished talking about the 20, so we need to segue into the next one. So, Pete, would you like to pick up?
Yes. So cool. So the 20, I'm still stunned that that's a real instrument. I had no idea, but it is absolutely gorgeous. And I'd love to try it, but $20,000. I don't know that that's going to pass the test.
Well, you could have an easier way if you just visit me. I have one in my office.
Oh, there you go.
In my office. Yeah. The beautiful thing is not only the synth, we designed everything around it. There's been a special box. There's been a special. It was kind of packed in a suit sack. Everything was designed. Even the manual was designed. So we really put a lot of energy into that one.
Wow.
Just for a few units that are out there. I think it's 4 or 5 units that are out there in the market.
It is bespoke type synthesizer.
Yeah, and it's one of those future classics that are going to be, the collectors are going to be falling over, I would suspect, in the future. So there you go. And, when you guys are complaining about, when you're complaining about 20K, Pete, double it. And that's what we'll be paying down under if one ever actually lands here,
Well, it's like, you have to... Shipping stuff to Australia is not the simplest thing. You're all the way down there on the bottom of the world. And
we're in the arse end of the world.
Upside down.
Yeah, the arse end of the world. We're hanging upside down. Blood rushes to our head. All of that type of stuff.
Yep.
Good one.
Yeah. So, Axel, given... All right, so we talked about the 20. Like, is there anything else that you... we're looking at here that's like a favorite design, or maybe to turn it around, is there a least favorite design that you've worked on over the years? Something you want to talk shit about here at the end, or
I think I can agree with Vin that the 90s were something weird. I'm not so much keen of the yellow, orange color faces that we have with Waldorf, but that's just but some people love it. They still tell me it's the best looking synth ever. It's all a matter of time.
Well, the Wave, not so much the bright, the bright yellow ones that you can see from across the room, but I still like the look of the Wave. Yeah.
So as a product designer, you always sit between what the manufacturer wants and needs and what the user wants and needs. And sometimes it's hard to get the right mix between that, The manufacturer wants something that sells very well, and he wants it to look and feel great, but he doesn't want to invest too much because he wants revenue. And that sometimes puts decisions into the game that are not positive for the design. So this is something that is a very important factor in when we design things, that we have an idea or a clue of what is the cost, what is the money we can spend on what's on the outside and what people touch and feel, and how can we make that in the best way, and how can we bring the functionality of something in the best way to the user without spending too much money. Many of the companies I'm working for, they're no big companies. They're smaller companies that have a lot of passion and enthusiasm, but not so much money. We don't want to waste their money. We want to give them something that's good for them, but also good for the user, but because then it's a successful product. So that's the biggest challenge, the big challenge that we always have to face, and that sometimes the user doesn't see what's behind the product. He cannot look behind the product. Why does something look and feel like that? There's many things that drive a design decision that's not recognizable at the first glance, or even when you use it.
Well, let me ask this then. Is there a company that you've been wanting to design for, but you haven't yet?
I think I'm very happy with the companies that use my services. That's fantastic, And like I told you at the beginning of this conversation, when I bring out the folder with all the letters that I wrote out into the world when I was a youngster, when I was a young designer, and when I see that most of the companies that I wrote the letter to, if they're still existing, they're my clients now. I'm happy. I'm very, very happy. I've been asked. I don't know what another interview a few weeks ago or months ago. what kind of progress I appreciate in our field. I love the progress that teenage engineering is doing. They are great designers, and I always, I'm a bit jealous in what they're doing because they have a very good style, So this is something I really love. I also said I would love to do a design for Hans Nordelius because I love his instruments. I play them myself. But then again, I think maybe not, because if it's always not that attractive to be a consumer or play something that I designed myself, because I know so much about it. It loses the magic.
Yep.
Don't know if you can follow that. Sometimes you have that when you play music. When I was a young musician, I didn't understand why I loved Toto so much. It's because they have these jazz chordings that they use in the rock music. And you come to a point as a musician where you understand what they're doing. But in that moment, it loses its fascination to me. Yeah. And this is something which I find I still want to have, to be just a consumer, to buy an instrument and fall in love with it. And that's probably the reason why it's better not doing design for Nord, because I love the instrument so much. There's things you could do better, maybe, but I'm not sure. If you discuss with Hans, he's very clever, but still there's some points where I think that you could improve the industrial design a bit, but maybe not. I'm not sure. Maybe Nord. I would like to work for Nord one day, but I don't think that it will happen.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to get real comfortable with red, I think, if you're going to work with Nords.
Oh yeah, this is something where I couldn't take them away from, and it's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay. Very recognizable.
Apart from teenage engineering, and they're those tiny little pocket things. Is that the one, or am I thinking of something else?
Well, they do the OP1 and some other stuff, but they do the pocket ones too. But that's not really where the design, the pocket operator is not really where a lot of their design goes.
Okay.
Now, the design is more in their higher value instruments, but they're not just doing these musical instruments. They do more things. You should check out their website. It's very interesting and very Bauhausy, very designed.
Yep.
So they're doing things I could never give to one of my clients, because it's very hard and very expensive to do. But they follow their, vision and strategy in a very sober and clean way. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So is there any other synthesizers that designs that you were impressed by? I mean, we did cover the JD800, but that brought out some swearing.
Yeah. I grew up with all the synthesizers, maybe we were kind of the same age. I'm born in 1961. So my first synthesizer was an ARP X, and I loved the look and feel of that. And I loved the look and feel of the Yamaha organs and synthesizers back then.
Yep.
And they still kind of tickle a nerve. That is, it's more of like a feeling, I appreciate Yamaha design a lot, I must say.
Yep.
Especially from the past. Everybody who's been playing keyboards and who's my age, he remembers that one brochure that they had, the front page, where they had all their instruments set up in a square with a CP70, with a CS80, a CS60. Everything was on that picture. It was just something to fall in love with.
Yeah.
So that was very much inspiring me to be a designer for musical instruments.
Yeah. And the designs of those instruments back there in the late 70s and early 80s, they were very, very different between the American and the Japanese. There was different design philosophies there.
Oh, yeah.
I think where they started merging, well, for me, Jupiter 8 was where that Japanese design was starting to kind of head more towards what the large American polys were, but it was different again because they had the faders, where the Americans were all
they
knobs.
had the faders, they had the colorful knobs.
Yes,
this is something that will probably come back one day. I love the colorfulness of these instruments, even the preset instruments. It was just like choosing something from a nice meal. You were like it was so adding some kind of fun element.
Yeah. The Jupiter 8 design is still iconic, and they still try and reproduce it on some of the later instruments, and I'm like, don't just Jupiter 8 was Jupiter 8, leave it, you know. Yeah.
But that's then just what we call a formalism. If you try to put something, some strong design element into something where it's not necessary, just for the reason of marketing or that people get the connection that's not really there, that's not good.
No, and that's why I appreciated the JD800 because well, JD800 allegedly stands for Jupiter Digital, right? That's what that's what JD means, and could you imagine that with all the colors? It just wouldn't have worked. That design wouldn't have worked with the colors. Yeah,
it wouldn't work. Yeah.
No, there you go. Look, we're getting towards the end of it, and is there anything else that you want to discuss, Axel?
Not from my side. I must confess, I'm a bit tired now. It's 10:30. But it's been a very, very nice conversation with you two guys. It's great.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun for me. And
yeah, Pete.
So maybe wrap it up then.
Yeah, I think so.
Sounds good.
So look, thank you very, very much, Axel, for your time and energy today. That was awesome, and we'll have to get you back on again. You know, I think we should have a fun show where we'll get you and Peter Gorgas on together.
Oh yeah,
that would be fun.
That'll be a 6-hour marathon, but I think it'd be a fun one. Pete, again, thank you very, very much for your time and energy.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and I think with that, guys, we can wrap it up. All right, on to the next.